Chapter 640. Through the ancient jade, Ning Fan saw the life of this Yuan ancestor. He wasn't born in the demon race but a mortal village. When he was young, he yearned to become an immortal and cultivate the Tao. He heard that there was a mountain in the north where immortals lived. With great perseverance, he walked 10,000 li of land barefoot and climbed a 10,000 zhang tall mountain to find the immortal master's abode. He knelt outside the abode for a month and fainted due to hunger. The cultivator in the abode was a gold core realm cultivator who was born in the Yuan clan. He was impressed by the young man's determination, so he woke him up and took him in as a disciple, teaching him demonic techniques. From then on, he shed his mortal body and became a demon. He had demon veins and merged with the 5 spirits. When he reached the harmonious spirit realm, his master was killed by a nascent soul realm cultivator. When he returned to his hometown, the entire village was massacred by that nascent soul realm cultivator. From then on, his heart turned cold and he ignored life and death. He killed countless people along the way and gradually achieved great success in his demonic techniques. After forming his demon core and condensing his demon nascent soul, he massacred his enemy's entire clan. He got his revenge, but he was lonely for the rest of his life. After cultivating for hundreds of years, he finally understood that cultivating the Tao wasn't as free and unfettered as he imagined. If he could, he would rather become immortal. At that moment, his reputation gradually rose and he was valued by a member of the Yuan clan who wanted to recommend him into the clan. However, he rejected the opportunity and went to a mortal town alone. He became a carpenter and became immortal. After turning into a mortal for 100 years, his heart gradually calmed down. The various states of life turned into the power of intent realm and were engraved in his heart. Even though he didn't actively cultivate the Tao, his cultivation base kept improving during the 100 years. Eventually, he advanced to the spirit-severing realm. The knot in his heart was gradually resolved and he wanted to achieve the great Tao. Even if the path of cultivation was lonely, he had to continue. However, at this moment, a harmonious spirit girl barged into his heart. That girl didn't have a high aptitude and her body was weak. However, she spent all her effort for him and her life was about to end. He was moved and forgot about the great Tao. He carried the girl back to the Yuan clan and took the initiative to join them, hoping to use the clan's secret technique to save her life. After 100 years of loneliness and 1,000 years of waiting, his cultivation base improved step by step until he reached the 4th heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. Even with his help, the girl only reached the nascent soul realm. She had reached the limit of her lifespan. Heavenly Tao, Samsara, Destiny. With his void fragmentation realm cultivation base, he would not be able to defeat or stop them. When the young woman's corpse gradually grew cold in his arms, he seemed to have gone mad as he roared toward the sky. Even if the heavens want you to die, I will take you back. On that day, he battled against the heavenly law puppet, but in the end, he was defeated and died. In the end, he failed to take back the young girl's soul, but as promised, he died with the young girl and was buried in the same grave. Ning Fan kept the ancient jade and closed his eyes, remaining silent for a long time. This stone wall contained a deep determination. That determination surpassed life and death. That was why even though this stone wall didn't mention life and death, it was the one with the deepest Tao comprehension out of the previous 3 stone walls. Ning Fan could imagine the scene of that old ancestor Yuan Qi roaring at the heavens while hugging the corpse of his beloved. Even if the heavens want you to die, I will take you back. Ning Fan could feel that kind of pain. If he and the other women die in the hands of the heavenly Tao, he would certainly kill the heavens in a fit of rage and seize their souls from them. He cultivated bitterly and slaughtered all along the way, all for the sake of preventing such a situation from occurring. Because he couldn't bear that kind of pain, he would never let it happen. Never. Even if he had to rewrite the rules of the great Tao of life and death, he had to let her be reborn. For example, the daughter of the celestial emperor, Mu Weiliang, and his mother, Ning Qian. No matter what, he would revive them and save them from reincarnation. Because of this man's obsession, he couldn't see through life and death and mourned for the dead. It was precisely because he couldn't see through life and death that he dared to step on life and death, defying the heavens. The great Tao of life and death is intertwined with destiny. If the heavens want you to die, you can't go against it. If you want to escape from life and death, you must cultivate the great Tao. This is the will of the heavens. You can't go against it, but how can the world be so perfect? If the heavens want me to die, then I should die. If heaven wants Shiha to die, how can I watch Shiha lose her life in the cycle of reincarnation? I can't do it. Perhaps in this lifetime, I won't be able to see through life and death, because I'm not willing to be controlled by fate, to be imprisoned by life and death. Too many people cultivate the Tao and comprehend life and death, but they only make their Tao conform to the heavenly Tao. In the end, they succumb to fate. That's why they can't become immortals in this life. If the heavens sent a tribulation, it could only be avoided and not resisted. If the heavens snatched away one's love, one would only grieve and not oppose it. When the time comes, it could only sigh and not resist. This isn't the Tao I want to cultivate. The life and death qi in his body suddenly rose rapidly. The life and death qi attached to his primordial spirit, intertwining with each other to form three strange black and white Tao patterns. He was still comprehending life and death. However, his Tao had begun to rise above life and death. Cultivators should go against the heavens because immortal cultivation was something that defies the heavens and changes one's fate. If a mere mortal wanted to live as long as heaven and earth, he would first have to break the rules of life and death of the heavenly Tao. Only by doing so could he surpass the limit of lifespan given by heaven and earth and achieve immortality. He had to surpass the control of the heavenly Tao of the mortal world and then ascend. Ning Fan turned into a ray of light and flew out of the crater of the volcano, heading towards the 497th floor. At this moment, there were a total of 3 black and white Tao patterns on his primordial spirit. One more Tao comprehension of life and death was equivalent to one more black and white Tao pattern. There were 500 cave dwellings in this place, which contained the Tao comprehension of 500 stone walls left by ancestor Yueni. These Tao comprehension were not the comprehension of ordinary cultivators. They were the comprehension of those who had experienced life and death and cultivated the life and death qi in their bodies. From the 3 ancient scriptures of the Rain Sovereign, Ning Fan learned that there were 3,000 great Taos in heaven and earth and 800 external Taos. If the number of black and white Tao patterns on his primordial spirit reaches 3,800, he would be able to surpass the limit of lifespan given by the heavenly Tao of the mortal world and achieve immortality. There were too many void fragmentation realm cultivators who had comprehended life and death. Many of them had cultivated the life and death qi, but they did not manage to attach life and death to their primordial spirit. Attaching life and death to one's primordial spirit was called Tao unification. The reason why these people could not do it was because they did not have the heart to defy fate. Some of them could achieve Tao unification with their primordial spirit, but they could not attain 3,800 Tao patterns of life and death in the end. Thus, they missed the opportunity to attain the immortal realm. Within the 9 worlds, there were no more than 10 people who could achieve Tao unification with their primordial spirit. Most of these 10 people were rogue immortals, rogue demons, rogue devils and others. They had failed to attain immortality time and time again and tried to attain the immortal realm again and again. At this moment, Ning Fan's eyes glowed with faint black and white light. The light was still weak, but only those rogue immortal old monsters could produce it. The light had a name. It was called Tao Light of Life and Death. Even though the light was weak, Ning Fan had indeed achieved the first step of Tao unification with his primordial spirit. On the 497th floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower, on top of a gigantic tree that was as thick as a mountain, there was a cave dwelling. The puppets in the cave dwelling had long been destroyed and abandoned at the side. The formation light in the cave abode had long been broken, its brilliance shattered. Outside the cave dwelling, Ken Feng, the burly man surnamed Zhu, Old Man Feng and Old Man Lei were injured and fell to the ground. Each of them wore a shocked expression. Before they arrived, the cave dwelling on the 497th floor had already been occupied by someone. The person who occupied the cave dwelling was none other than the person who injured them. He was a middle-aged man wearing red robes. He is one of the 72 Red Guards under the command of the Southern Demon Sea Scarlet Sovereign, Chi Mei. Ken Feng's eyes were filled with shock. Rumor has it that even though this person's cultivation base is only at the Void Inquiry stage, he is already unrivaled among Void Inquiry stage experts. He can even fight against ordinary Void Pierce stage experts. The burly man surnamed Zhu was filled with fear. This person is ruthless and ruthless. Every time he attacks, he will definitely take someone's life. The reason why he didn't kill us is because of the old Yuan sovereign's order. Old Man Feng and Old Man Lei said with a bitter smile. For Void Inquiry stage experts and 28 Void Glimpse stage experts were defeated by Chi Mei alone. Get lost. A disdainful sneer resounded from the cave dwelling. It was unknown what kind of divine ability the voice contained. As soon as it spread, the air immediately began to sizzle and burn. As soon as Ken Feng and the others heard the voice, they immediately let out a miserable cry and coughed out blood. After being shaken by the demonic voice, everyone's foundation was injured. Without tens of years of recuperation, it was impossible for them to fully recover. Chi Mei, don't you dare go too far. I'm not your match. There will naturally be someone who can defeat you like a dog and seize your cave dwelling to avenge us. Ken Feng gritted his teeth and said angrily. According to his character, he would never dare to fight a strong opponent head-on. However, now that his foundation was injured by Chi Mei, his anger gave him some courage and he did not leave immediately. Instead, he wanted to stay here and watch Chi Mei make a fool out of himself. The person who could defeat Chi Mei like a dog was naturally Ning Fan. From Ken Feng's point of view, Ning Fan was so greedy that he would definitely come to the 497th floor to seize the cave dwelling on this floor after he seized the previous one. At first, he hated Ning Fan for being greedy. Now, however, he could not wait for Ning Fan to come earlier and take care of this arrogant Chi Mei. Oh. You said that someone from the upper floors will come to the lower floors and defeat me like a dog? Chi Mei smiled sinisterly. With his strength, he could have gone to the lower floors and fought against the Void Pierce stage old monsters. However, he chose to occupy the upper floors instead. It was because there were only a few Void Glimpse stage and Void Inquiry stage experts in the upper floors. To him, he could easily defeat them without any risk. Even though Chi Mei was arrogant, he did not like to take risks. He knew that he did not have the strength to contest for the upper floors. Hence, there was no difference between the 101st floor and the 497th floor to him. The reason why he seized the cave dwelling on this floor was because the cultivators on this floor were weak. However, Ken Feng said that there would be someone from the upper floors who would come down and defeat him like a dog. Of course, he did not believe such words at all. Humph. Don't doubt me. Bai Mu will be here soon. His strength is even higher than yours. Bai Mu has taken all the cave dwellings on the upper 3 floors. He will certainly seize your cave dwelling. Do you know that all of us were defeated by him and were chased to the lower floors by him? The burly man surnamed Zhu added. Bai Mu? Bai Mu of the Light Feather clan? Are you saying that this Bai Mu can defeat me? Chi Mei laughed disdainfully. If Ken Feng had mentioned the names of other old monsters, Chi Mei might have taken him seriously. As for Bai Mu, he was just a cripple from the Light Feather clan. He was not afraid of him at all. If it wasn't for the fact that killing is forbidden in the Immortal Ascension Tower, I would only need 3 breaths to kill Bai Mu. Chi Mei sneered. Just as these words left his mouth, a vast and boundless aura suddenly descended upon the entire 497th level of the heavenly abode. Boundless. This aura force was neither sharp nor oppressive. However, it was as boundless as the earth and as vast as the heavens, giving people a sense of oppression that came from the bottom of their hearts. This was the aura force of the Great Tao. Whose aura force is so terrifying? Chi Mei was shocked. Even Can Feng and the others who were present were shocked. The aura force of the Great Tao. How could an ordinary person integrate the Great Tao into their body and merge their aura force with the Great Tao? It's Bai Mu. Can Feng was the first to exclaim. A ray of traveling light approached them from afar. After a while, the traveling light dispersed and a white-robed young man walked out from it. It was none other than Ning Fan. At this moment, Ning Fan's eyes were glowing with a faint Tao light of life and death. However, he gave off an aura force that no one dared to look at directly. It wasn't a murderous aura, nor was it a ferocious might. It was just the might of the Tao, but it was enough to make anyone with a weaker cultivation feel terrified. He is Bai Mu. Is he really Bai Mu? How is this possible? The trash of the White Feather clan actually cultivated the life and death Tao light. That's the life and death Tao light. In the Yao realm, there are only 3 loose demons who can cultivate this light. As a Crimson Guard of the Crimson Hall, I have seen the old Crimson Emperor once. The old Crimson Emperor had the cultivation of a loose demon, and his comprehension of life and death had already reached the end. In his eyes, there was this life and death Tao light. The old Crimson Sovereign once said that in the light of life and death, a ray of light can destroy a void-pierced stage expert. This Bai Mu can cultivate the life and death Tao light. Just a wisp of light is enough to kill me. How can I be his match? Chi Mei could not help but feel regret. He had just looked down on Bai Mu and said that he could kill Bai Mu in 3 breaths. Now, it seemed like his words were really ridiculous. I want to enter this abode to have a look. I don't want anyone to disturb me. Those who are not involved, leave. Ning Fan said indifferently and walked towards the abode of the giant tree step by step. His eyes indifferently swept across Can Feng, the burly man surnamed Zhu, Old Men Feng and Old Men Lei, and the Void Glimpse stage experts. Eventually, it was as if his eyes had penetrated the abode and landed on Chi Mei, who was inside. The moment Ning Fan's eyes landed on them, all of them began to sweat profusely. It was as if Ning Fan could kill Void Glimpse stage and Void Inquiry stage experts with just a gaze and a single thought. He could decide life and death with just a single thought. Fellow Taoist Bai, please enter the abode. I don't want this abode anymore. Chi Mei gritted his teeth and quickly walked out of the abode. He lowered his head and cupped his fists at Ning Fan, feeling uneasy. Ning Fan, however, did not care about Chi Mei at all and walked straight into the abode. Chi Mei could not help but let out a sigh of relief. It seemed like Ning Fan did not have the intention to hold him accountable. Can Feng and the others, on the other hand, were greatly disappointed. They originally wanted to see Ning Fan teach Chi Mei a lesson. Now, it seemed like Ning Fan did not have the intention to hurt them. At this moment, Ning Fan's eyes were filled with Tao light and his mind was cultivating Tao sense. At this moment, if it was possible, he did not want to attack Chi Mei. He just wanted to look at the stone walls of the abode and comprehend life and death. Just as Ning Fan was about to step into the abode, he suddenly stopped and turned around. The Tao light in his eyes dimmed slightly and a cold light flashed. At the moment when the cold light rose, Chi Mei's heart was filled with fear. He wondered if Ning Fan was going to attack him. Just as he was guessing, 4 rays of traveling light whistled and flew down from the 498th floor. They arrived in front of the abode on the 497th floor and landed on the ground. I'm the clan leader of the Black Crane clan. Today, I'm here to teach Bai Mu a lesson. Those who have nothing to do with this, get lost. All 4 of them were void-pierced stage old monsters. Among them, there was even the clan leader of the Black Crane clan who was infamous among the void-pierced stage experts. The 4 of them came in a threatening manner and they came for Ning Fan. 4 void-pierced stage old monsters. Moreover, the clan leader of the Black Crane clan is also among them. These people want to find trouble with Bai Mu. How can Bai Mu be a match for them? Some void glimpse stage experts thought. Ordinary void glimpse stage experts naturally did not know how powerful the Tao light of life and death was. Ken Feng, Chi Mei, the burly man surnamed Zhu and old men Feng and Lei stared at the clan leader and his group as if they were looking at idiots. They knew very well how powerful the Tao light of life and death was. It was a great ability that only the 3 rogue demons of the demon world could cultivate. No matter how powerful the clan leader of the Black Crane clan was, could he resist such a great ability? From their point of view, the clan leader and his group were obviously here to deliver themselves to Ning Fan. Are you the clan leader of the Black Crane clan? I'm not interested in the grudges between the Black Crane clan and the Light Feather clan. I'll give you 3 breaths to leave now and I'll let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, I won't show any mercy. Ning Fan's expression was indifferent. The Black Crane clan had massacred the Light Feather clan. However, Ning Fan was not a member of the Light Feather clan. Thus, he naturally did not hate the Black Crane clan. He had promised Tan Tianyen that he would not kill anyone in the Immortal Ascension Tower. However, it did not mean that he could tolerate the existence of enemies. Ken Feng and the others only fought each other because of a small matter like fighting for the abode. They were not mortal enemies. The leader of the Black Crane clan was not a kind person. Even though this person was weak, Ning Fan would certainly not let him live if he is an enemy. Humph. Boasting shamelessly. Showing no mercy. I would like to see how a mere void inquiry stage cultivator like you is going to show no mercy to 4 void pierce stage experts. Kill him. The clan leader of the Black Crane clan sneered. Together with his 3 void pierce stage friends, they took out their natal treasures and attacked Ning Fan. Ning Fan's eyes turned cold. He had given the clan leader 3 breaths to save his life. However, they used their actions to show that their hostility towards him could not be resolved. The grudges between the 2 clans had nothing to do with Ning Fan. However, the enemies who came to attack him must die. My left eye sees life and my right eye sees death. Ning Fan's eyes suddenly flashed with the Tao light of life and death. That ray of light split into 2. The white light gathered in his left eye while the black light gathered in his right eye. A ray of black Tao light shot out from his right eye and swept across the 4 natal treasures that were hovering in the sky. The 4 magic treasures began to decay and lose their power. In the end, they turned into ashes in an instant and scattered on the ground. That black light then swept across the 3 void pierce stage old monsters. The 3 void pierce stage old monsters were the helpers that the clan leader invited. As soon as they were swept by the Tao light of death, their souls immediately left their bodies. Life and death. Tao light of life and death. This Bai Mu has actually cultivated the Tao light of life and death. How is he in existence that we can fight against? Black Crane, you've made me suffer. This old man and you are irreconcilable. Such a powerful enemy. Such a powerful enemy. It's too late for me to regret. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The 3 of them had different expressions on their faces. The moment they were swept by the Tao light of death, all of them glared at the clan leader with resentment. Then, they spurted out blood essence from their mouths and turned into rays of light, fleeing to the upper floors with all their might. At this moment, they only wanted to escape from the Immortal Ascension Tower. As for chasing after Ning Fan, it was something that they would never dare to think about in this lifetime. However, it was a little too late for the 3 of them to retreat now. The 3 of them were fleeing with all their might. They did not notice that their physical bodies were aging rapidly and beginning to turn into ashes bit by bit. Countless black Tao patterns appeared on their bodies. It was the power of the Tao of death. Before the 3 of them could get far, their physical bodies had already turned into ashes. Their demon souls were destroyed as well. They died with hatred. This was the power of the Tao light of death. Under the power of the great Tao, the weak could hardly escape death. How? How is this possible? You're not Bai Mu. You're definitely not Bai Mu. Bai Mu isn't as powerful as you are. He's just a disciple, a piece of trash. The Black Crane clan master seemed to have gone mad as he looked at everything before him in disbelief. After that, he suddenly bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood essence before turning around and fleeing without any regard for his life. Ning Fan did not want to find out what kind of grudge he had with Bai Mu that made him want to kill Ning Fan no matter what. There was only one thing Ning Fan wanted to do when the enemy came knocking on his door, and that was to send the enemy to his death. A beam of white light shot out from his left eye and swept across the deranged Black Crane clan leader. The Black Crane clan's leader suddenly shuddered as countless white Dao patterns appeared. The moment the white Dao pattern appeared, the Black Crane clan leader's cultivation level plummeted, and his appearance gradually became younger. This youthfulness was not an increase in lifespan, but an illusion of magic. However, his cultivation had fallen along with his youthful appearance. Void Glimpse Stage, Peak Divine Transformation Realm, Late Divine Transformation Realm, Mid Divine Transformation Realm, Early Divine Transformation Realm. Peak Nascent Soul Realm. Late Nascent Soul Realm, Mid Nascent Soul Realm, Early Nascent Soul Realm, Peak Golden Core Realm. To his horror, the Black Crane clan leader realized that he could not resist the decline of his cultivation level at all. After his cultivation level fell to the Gold Core realm, the Black Crane clan leader shed his human form and turned into a half-human half-crane demonic appearance. After his cultivation level fell to the Harmonious Spirit realm and Vein Opening realm, he completely turned into a black crane with weak demonic power. The white light on the Black Crane's body suddenly split apart. It let out a miserable shriek and fell to the ground from the sky. As soon as its head touched the ground, it died. The scene was extremely strange. This is the power of the Tao light of life and death. Chi Mei's eyes were filled with astonishment. Ning Fan had just shot out 2 rays of black and white light from his eyes and 4 Void Pierce stage experts had died mysteriously. This scene was just too terrifying. Ning Fan, however, did not care about their shocked expressions. He just waved his hand and kept the storage pouches of the Black Crane clan leader and the others. He did not pay too much attention to their storage pouches. The only thing that made him slightly satisfied was the 9 pieces of star stones that were lying quietly in the Black Crane clan leader's storage pouch. These 9 star stones were seized from the Light Feather clan. They had the magical effect of increasing one's star power. If he has the time, Ning Fan would absorb the power of 10 star stones to increase the number of natal stars. Now, he still had something important to do. He needed to study all the Tao insights on the stone walls of the Immortal Ascension Tower. Ning Fan was quite satisfied with the power of the Tao light of life and death. If the number of Tao marks of life and death on his primordial spirit reaches a certain level, this light would not only be able to kill Void Pierce stage experts but also Void Fragmentation realm experts. How could the great ability of a rogue demon be that simple? Ning Fan walked into the cave dwelling of the giant tree step by step. Chi Mei and the others did not even dare to breathe too loudly as they watched Ning Fan leave. After entering the cave dwelling, he suddenly transmitted his voice to them. I have no interest in occupying the cave dwellings in the upper 3 floors. You guys can do whatever you want with them. Air. Ken Feng, the burly man surnamed Zhu and old men Feng and Lei were speechless. Ning Fan snatched the cave dwelling but did not occupy it. Could it be that he was just snatching it for fun? This was not something they could care about. All they knew was that since Ning Fan did not want to occupy the cave dwelling, it would be their turn to fight for it. Ken Feng looked at the group of Void Glimpse stage experts beside him and sneered. Then, he endured his injuries and flew to the upper floors. Without a powerful enemy like Ning Fan, ordinary Void Glimpse stage experts would no longer be allies but competitors. Forget it. I will also go to the upper floors to fight for the cave dwellings. Chi Mei sighed and flew to the upper floors. The eyes of the burly man surnamed Zhu, old men Feng and Lei flashed and they flew to the upper floors. Very soon, Ning Fan was the only one left in this place. He entered the cave dwelling and peeked at the stone walls. Then, He left and went to the next floor. As he went down the floors, he either subdued those who fought for the cave dwellings or sent them flying with a wave of his sleeve. Ning Fan had already walked through the first 100 floors. No one could stop him. Void Glimpse Stage, Void Inquiry Stage, Void Pierce Stage, Absolute Void Stage. Each of the old monsters was no match for Ning Fan. After inspecting the cave dwellings, Ning Fan would often return them to them as he did not want to chase the other cultivators to the lower floors. That would be too troublesome. In the cave dwelling on the 496th floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower, a Void Pierce Stage old man whose head was bleeding sighed continuously. He was the owner of this cave dwelling, but he was defeated by Ning Fan with a single move. I didn't expect Bai Mu to be so powerful. Initially, I wanted to teach him a lesson, but he defeated me instead. In the cave dwelling on the 442nd floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower, a Void Pierce Stage female cultivator was hugging her knees and shivering in a corner of the wall. So scary. Bai Mu is really scary. I'm not his match. He defeated me with a single move. Luckily, this is the Immortal Ascension Tower. Otherwise, he will definitely sully my purity. This female cultivator did not even bother to look at her own body. She was just a Void Pierce Stage cultivator. Yet, she was actually worried that Ning Fan would pluck her. It was really ridiculous. To the current Ning Fan, a human cauldron whose cultivation base had not reached the void fragmentation realm would not be of much help to him. Even if this woman pays him 100 million immortal jade, Ning Fan would not be tempted. In the cave dwelling on the 409th floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower, a burly sword cultivator with an absolute void stage cultivation base was holding a broken sword and complaining incessantly. He had set up a formation inside the cave dwelling. When Ning Fan arrived, he wanted to launch a sneak attack on him and snatch a few treasures. Unfortunately, Ning Fan crushed his flying sword with just a finger and severely injured him. Not only did he fail to snatch his treasures, he was also robbed clean by Ning Fan. His storage pouch and his purple-grade fishing rod were all taken away by Ning Fan. How unlucky! How could I be so blind as to provoke such a person? Bai Mu, Bai Mu. This person is clearly extremely powerful. He's not as weak as the rumors say. All the way down, Ning Fan passed through each of the abodes at an extremely fast speed. No one could stop his footsteps. 400 floors, 300 floors, 200 floors, 100 floors. When he entered the first 100 levels of the cave abode, there were already 400 life and death Dao patterns on his Yuan Shen. He had seen the Dao comprehensions of 400 Yuan ancestors and understood the Dao of life and death of 400 of them. The Dao light of life and death in his eyes was already rather resplendent. Under this light, even a Shatter Realm cultivator would find it difficult to survive. Half a day had passed since the start of the grand competition. At this moment, it was night time in the outside world. Immortal Ascension Pagoda, 100th level cave abode. The one in charge of the cave dwelling was none other than the great elder of Yuan Palace, Zhou Nan. The reason why Zhou Nan entered the Immortal Ascension Tower this time was not to compete for benefits but to test Ning Fan. The reason why he chose this spot to wait for Ning Fan was because he had a premonition that Ning Fan would come to this floor. If Ning Fan's strength was not enough to reach this floor, he would not be worthy of Miss Zixin's heart. Of course, Zhou Nan did not know why Tan Zixin valued Ning Fan so much. He had the same thought as the current Yuan Emperor. They both thought that Tan Zixin had fallen in love with Ning Fan. Sigh. Miss could have fallen in love with anyone but this Bai Mu. Miss doesn't seem to know how bad Bai Mu's reputation is. If Miss knows that Bai Mu can even have sex with demonic beasts that have yet to fully transform, she will definitely be sad. This Bai Mu's behavior is really shameless. While Zhou Nan was pondering, he suddenly felt a boundless Dao power coming towards him. In the aura of the Dao power, a white-robed young man was approaching the 100th level of the cave abode. Zhou Nan was so shocked that his eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. Dao light of life and death. How is this possible? Is he really Bai Mu? Chapter 641. As Ning Fan got closer to him, the astonishment in Zhou Nan's eyes grew stronger. Actually, Zhou Nan had also thought that Miss Zixin, who had never been interested in men, would suddenly pay attention to Ning Fan because Ning Fan was different from ordinary people. However, he did not expect that Ning Fan had actually cultivated the Tao light of life and death. Currently, there were only 3 rogue demon old monsters in the entire demon world who had cultivated this light. Ning Fan was the 4th one. Even though Ning Fan's current cultivation base was just at the void inquiry stage, Zhou Nan did not dare to underestimate him. A cultivator who could cultivate the ability of a rogue demon would certainly have a bright future. Miss Zixin's eyes are really sharp. Everyone only knows that Bai Mu is a puppet cultivator, but they didn't know that he is actually so amazing. He actually cultivated the Tao light of life and death. Zhou Nan stood up and walked out of the abode step by step, and his expression carried a hint of kindness. Little friend, are you here to take the cave residence from me? What Zhou Nan meant was to use the cave residence as a bait to test Ning Fan's ability. He was holding a treasure which was personally refined by Tan Zixin. Its grade was not high, but it could emit a trace of yin and yang power. Therefore, it was quite extraordinary. It was the magic treasure that Tan Zixin gave him. She wanted to use it to test if Ning Fan had a way to break the formation. Ning Fan's eyes turned solemn. He did not expect that the person who occupied the 100th floor of the cave residence would be the dignified great elder of the Origin Palace, Zhou Nan. In Ning Fan's opinion, Zhou Nan had a cultivation base at the 4th heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. He was totally capable of fighting for the top 20 caverns and fighting for the essence clear pill. However, Zhou Nan avoided the fight and chose to occupy the 100th floor instead. It was really unreasonable. Perhaps, Zhou Nan was just too embarrassed to fight for the top 20 caverns with his peers since he was the great elder of the Origin Palace. Excluding Ning Fan and Zhou Nan, there were a total of 47 void fragmentation realm experts who entered the Immortal Ascension Tower this time. Ning Fan was already mentally prepared that he would definitely have to fight against void fragmentation realm old monsters if he enters the first 100 floors of the cave residence. Thus, he was not too surprised at this moment. I just want to enter the cave residence to have a look. I'll leave after that. I won't fight for it. I wonder if the Great Elder can do me a favor and let me in to have a look. Facing Zhou Nan, Ning Fan, of course, would not be so arrogant as to attack him. Zhou Nan was startled, then he smiled and said, "It's just a cave abode, it's naturally very easy. If little friend is willing to receive an attack from this old man, not to mention letting little friend take a look at this cave abode, even giving this cave abode to little friend is not impossible. Of course, you don't have to worry. This attack of mine only has void inquiry stage strength. Even if you can't withstand it, you won't be hurt too badly. Hee hee. Little friend, are you willing to receive a void inquiry stage attack from me?" Ning Fan's eyes flickered, and after a moment, he nodded and said, "Good. Great Elder, please make a move." If it was just a void inquiry stage attack from Zhou Nan, it would naturally not be difficult at all. If Zhou Nan harbored ill intentions and had ulterior motives, Ning Fan also had the means to protect himself. Thus, it was impossible for him to be injured by Zhou Nan. He was already somewhat certain that the reason why Zhou Nan appeared in the 100th floor of the abode was probably because of him. However, Ning Fan didn't know what Zhou Nan's intention was. Was it good or bad? Zhou Nan nodded with a smile and took out a flying sword that was half red and half blue from his sleeve. This sword was called the Dual Extremities Sword. It was a mid-grade mortal void flying sword. This sword could activate a trace of the power of yin and yang to attack the enemy. Besides, the more the two extremes of yin and yang were separated, the stronger the power of this sword would be. Little friend, be careful. This sword has a trace of yin and yang power. Even though it is a mid-grade mortal void treasure, you mustn't underestimate it. Activate. Zhou Nan suppressed his magic power and raised his hand to summon the sword. He did not lie. The destructive power of this sword was only at the void inquiry stage. Ning Fan's eyes flashed and he looked at the flying sword. As soon as the flying sword was summoned, it immediately split into two. One of them was red while the other was blue. Both of them slashed at Ning Fan from two completely different directions. With Ning Fan's cultivation base, it was naturally impossible for him to withstand a void inquiry stage attack. This flying sword isn't weak. The separation of the two extremes of yin and yang can actually increase the power of the sword. As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Fan reached out both of his hands and directly grabbed the two flying swords. That move of his really frightened Zhou Nan. One should know that even though the grade of the dual extremities sword was not high, it was extremely sharp. Ordinary cultivators at the third level of the golden body realm would not dare to casually catch it with their hands. If one's physical body was not strong enough, their palms would most likely be cut off by the flying sword if they try to catch the swords with their hands. "Little friend, be careful," Zhou Nan exclaimed. His original intention was not to hurt Ning Fan. He was just testing him. Just as he was about to save Ning Fan, his eyes suddenly widened. The moment Ning Fan stretched out both of his hands, the power of the flying swords that were originally unparalleled immediately decreased greatly. The reason why their power was greatly reduced was because Ning Fan managed to make the yin and yang of the swords return to harmony by just a casual move. Since the yin and yang could no longer be separated into two extremes, the power of the swords naturally decreased. After their power was greatly reduced, the two flying swords that were like dragons were easily caught by Ning Fan and combined into one flying sword. "I have already withstood Great Elder's attack. I wonder if I can enter your cave residence to have a look." Ning Fan tossed the flying sword back and looked at Zhou Nan meaningfully. "Of course you can. Little friend, please come in and have a look." Zhou Nan heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that Ning Fan's means were really not weak. He was worried about Ning Fan for nothing. However, looking at Ning Fan's meaningful expression, could it be that he had already seen through the test this time? Zhou Nan kept the dual extremities sword and recorded what happened just now into the shadow-bearing jade slip. Then, he fell into deep thought. I wonder if Miss Zixin will be satisfied with the result of this test. Speaking of which, the reason why Bai Mu didn't occupy the cave residence is probably because he wants to enter it to have a look. I suppose he wants to see the stone carvings inside. This young man has cultivated the Tao light of life and death. From today onwards, his name will certainly be known throughout the demon world. It is said that the Tao enlightenment of life and death of the previous Yuanqi ancestors are hidden inside the stone carvings. Could it be that this young man came for this Tao enlightenment? Unfortunately, without the primitive Emperor Jade in hand, he won't be able to see the Tao enlightenment of the stone carvings. Zhou Nan shook his head with a smile and inadvertently scanned the interior of the cave residence with his spirit sense. What he saw was incredible. He was completely petrified. He saw that Ning Fan had already embedded the golden ancient jade into the groove of the stone wall. His palm was placed on the stone wall and he was carefully comprehending it. The primitive Emperor Jade. This jade is definitely the primitive Emperor Jade. It has always been in the hands of the previous primitive emperor. Why is it in this young man's hands? That's right. The previous primitive emperor must have lent this jade to this young man. However, I don't know how Bai Mu got to know the previous primitive emperor and what is his relationship with him. How did he manage to borrow the primitive Emperor Jade? You should know that there were many experts in the palace who wanted to use the jade to comprehend the Tao. However, all of them were rejected by the previous primitive emperor. The previous primitive emperor said, "Those who aren't my eyes don't have the qualifications to comprehend life and death." Could it be that this Bai Mu is the person whom the previous primitive emperor likes? Of course, Zhou Nan would not think that Ning Fan stole or snatched this jade. Who was the previous primitive emperor? He was the best in the demon world. Who could snatch or steal from his hands? Since Ning Fan came with the jade, he naturally gained the favor of the previous primitive emperor. Zhou Nan's impression of Ning Fan changed once again. A person who could make the previous primitive emperor look at him in a different light was certainly not an ordinary person. Zhou Nan must not neglect him. After 10 breaths, Ning Fan kept the ancient jade. After a moment of silence, he walked out of the cave residence. There was one more Tao mark of life and death on his primordial spirit. As soon as he saw Ning Fan walking out, Zhou Nan took half a step forward, cupped his fists and said apologetically. There's one thing that I need to apologize to fellow Taoist. Previously, I was ordered by my mistress to test you with the dual extremities sword. I hope fellow Taoist can forgive me for offending you. However, fellow Taoist can be at ease. My mistress has always been kind and generous. She definitely won't have any evil intentions towards you. Zhou Nan guessed that Ning Fan had most likely seen through the test. In order to avoid any misunderstandings, it was better for him to explain himself. Since Great Elder has said so, I naturally won't take this matter to heart. I just hope that such a test won't happen again. Ning Fan had seen through Zhou Nan's test. He also knew that the person who refined the dual extremities sword was Tan Zixin. He had met Tan Zixin once before and he had peeked into her mind. She was not a scheming and vicious person. This test probably didn't have any evil intentions. Moreover, for the sake of the previous primitive emperor, he certainly wouldn't take this matter to heart. However, it was better to avoid such tests. No one liked to be tested or schemed against by others. I still need to go to the lower level of the cave residence. I'll take my leave first. Ning Fan cupped his fists at Zhou Nan. Then, he turned into a ray of light and flew towards the lower level of the cave residence. Oh. Does he really not want this cave residence? Zhou Nan was stunned. From Zhou Nan's point of view, even though Ning Fan had cultivated the Tao light of life and death, his cultivation base was still too low after all. At most, he could only use the Tao light of life and death to sweep across the void-pierce stage experts. With such strength, it wouldn't be difficult for him to snatch a cave residence in the 400th floor and above. However, in the first 100 floors, he could forget about snatching any cave residence. Currently, the first 100 floors were all occupied by Void Fragmentation Realm and Grand Void Stage experts. Without a cultivation base at the Grand Void Stage, it was impossible for them to compete for supremacy in this place. Could it be that this young man still has some trump cards? Is he confident that he can defeat a Grand Void Stage expert? As Zhou Nan thought about it, his curiosity was piqued. In a flash, he flew towards the 99th floor and quietly followed behind Ning Fan. In the 99th floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower. The person guarding this cave residence was an old man in black robes who was at the Grand Void Stage. He was from the Eastern Demon Sea and he was one of the 12 guardians of the Black Emperor of the Fang Wolf Palace. This person was sitting cross-legged inside the cave residence. His eyes were ferocious and his right fingernails were stained with blood. Previously, there were a total of 4 Grand Void Stage experts and 7 Grand Void Stage experts who wanted to snatch this cave residence from him. However, all of them were defeated by him using the Broken Phase Art. The Broken Phase Art was one of the best escape techniques of the Fang Wolf Palace. Coupled with his physical body which was close to the Nirvana realm, he rarely had any opponents below the Void Fragmentation realm. The black-robed old man licked the blood between his fingers with a gloomy smile. If it wasn't because of the old primitive emperor's order not to kill innocent people in the Immortal Ascension Tower, he would have already killed a few people who tried to snatch his cave residence. Oh. Is there still someone else who wants to steal my cave residence? Hee hee. Void Inquiry Stage Cultivator. How reckless. The black-robed old man's body suddenly turned into a broken phase and shattered one after another. At the next moment, his figure strangely appeared outside the cave residence. The so-called broken phase art was not about leaving an afterimage when one moved quickly. Instead, it was about separating one's physical body, allowing it to travel across space and appear in another place. This technique was used for sneak attacks. Naturally, it was impossible to guard against it. It was difficult for the person being attacked to determine where the user of the technique would appear. Are you trying to snatch my cave residence? The black-robed old man looked at Ning Fan, who was approaching him step by step, and laughed loudly. Then, he unleashed his unrivaled origin returning realm cultivation base and pressed it down on Ning Fan. His aura force covered the sky and earth, stirring up a strong gust of wind. All of a sudden, smoke and dust rose in all directions. Ning Fan walked among the smoke and dust. The smoke and dust immediately split into two and made way for him. I do want to enter the cave residence to have a look. His tone was indifferent. Then, his battle intent gradually rose to the sky. When he reached the 99th floor of the cave residence, it was already impossible for him to conceal his cultivation base anymore. If he only uses his Void Inquiry stage cultivation base, it would be impossible for him to defeat cultivators at the first, second, or third destruction realm. Even if he reveals his Void Fragmentation realm chi, he would not have much chance of winning against cultivators at the fourth or fifth destruction realm. As such, the only thing he could do was to fight them with all his might. No matter what, he wanted to gain the Tao insights of the first 100 floors of the cave residence and make the number of Tao marks of life and death on his primordial spirit exceed 500. You seem to have some ability to resist my aura force. However, you are just a Void Inquiry stage ant after all. In my eyes, you are just too weak. I don't need half a breath to defeat you. As soon as the black-robed old man finished speaking, he smirked and took a step forward. Suddenly, his body turned into pieces and disappeared. There was not a trace of chi nor a trace of his body. His body just vanished into thin air just like that. He did not dare to take Ning Fan's life because of the old Yuan Emperor's order. However, he intended to severely injure Ning Fan with a single blow. He was a wolf. A wolf. His nature was cruel. Great Elder Zhou Nan, who had followed them secretly, saw the black-robed old man using the broken phase art of the Wolf Fang Palace. His eyes immediately turned cold. Not good. This broken phase art is extremely powerful. Given his primordial returning realm cultivation base, there are few people below the Void Fragmentation realm who can defend against his sneak attack. Bai Mu will most likely be severely injured by his attack. Bai Mu is valued by the old Yuan Emperor and Miss Xian. No matter what, I must save him. Just as Zhou Nan was about to help Ning Fan, his hands suddenly stiffened in midair. His eyes were filled with astonishment. At this moment, Ning Fan's body suddenly gave off an extremely powerful aura force. His cultivation base had obviously reached the first heavenly layer of the Void Fragmentation realm. At this moment, Ning Fan's eyes were as cold as water. All of a sudden, he reached out his right hand and made a grabbing motion in the air. On the right side, where there was no one, the black-robed old man's miserable figure was pulled out by Ning Fan. Ning Fan pressed the back of the black-robed old man's head with his index and middle fingers while his other three fingers gripped the old man's neck tightly, making him unable to struggle at all. Then, his body suddenly leaned forward and forcefully pressed the old man's head to the ground in front of him, smashing it. You're actually a Void Fragmentation realm old monster. I was wrong. I shouldn't have harbored evil intentions towards Senior. Please forgive me, Senior. The black-robed old man's body trembled. In Ning Fan's hands, he was like a little chick without any strength to struggle at all. He begged in panic. However, it was already too late. With a loud bang, the ground within the 99th floor of the heavenly dwelling was completely shattered. The entire heavenly dwelling was already on the verge of collapsing. Ning Fan loosened his grip and stood up. He stepped on the ruins on the ground and walked into the cave dwelling in front of him. He no longer looked at the black-robed old man. At this moment, the black-robed old man's skull was completely shattered. His face was deformed and he was coughing out blood as he fainted on the ground. His head was deeply pressed into the ground by Ning Fan like an ostrich. His sea of consciousness was completely shattered. It was unknown whether he could reform his sea of consciousness and cultivate his spirit sense again. If it wasn't for the fact that he was extremely heavy-handed, Ning Fan wouldn't have destroyed his sea of consciousness. The destruction of a cultivator's sea of consciousness was like gouging out a mortal's eyes. This person only had himself to blame for everything. Is this Bai Mu's true strength? This young man really hid his strength well. With his strength, I'm afraid even an ordinary First Destruction Realm cultivator wouldn't be a match for him. There are a total of 29 cultivators at the First Destruction Realm and above this time. In other words, this young man can at least get to the 30th floor of the cave dwelling. Bai Mu of the Light Feather Clan. Everyone has underestimated this young man. Void Fragmentation Realm Cultivation Base, Nirvana Realm Physical Body, Tao Light of Life and Death. After this grand competition, this young man's name will certainly resound in the demon world. If we can recruit this young man and nurture him carefully, he will certainly become a rogue demon in tens of thousands of years. The foresight of the old Yuan Emperor and the young lady is really sharp. After tens of breaths, Ning Fan walked out of the cave dwelling. He looked at Zhou Nan's direction and flew towards the 98th floor without saying a word. Zhou Nan sighed. In a flash, he continued to follow Ning Fan. He wanted to see with his own eyes whether Ning Fan could get the first 30 floors of the cave dwelling. Chapter 642. On the 98th floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower. Above the sea of clouds, 3 primordial Great Void stage cultivators were fighting for the ownership of the cave dwelling with their own methods. The 3 of them were locked in a fierce battle. Suddenly, a void fragmentation chi force descended from the sky. Under that chi force, the 3 primordial Great Void stage cultivators' expressions changed. A void fragmentation old monster. They could only see that the void fragmentation realm cultivator was a white-robed young man. Before they could see his appearance clearly, they were sent flying by the white-robed young man's sleeves. I want to enter the cave dwelling to take a look. Those who are not involved, please leave. On the 74th floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower. At the bottom of a certain abyss, there was a supreme grade cave dwelling. Above the abyss, a fierce-looking old man covered in scales was sitting on the back of a huge flaming bull. He was staring coldly at the 2 primordial sword cultivators below. I have the help of the red beast. Even if the 2 of you attack together, you won't be able to defeat me. The scaled old man sneered and was about to attack the 2 people below. Suddenly, a void fragmentation chi force pressed down fiercely. Under this chi force, the flying swords in the hands of the 2 primordial sword cultivators began to tremble. The flaming bull, which had a ferocious look in its eyes, suddenly showed fear and prostrated on the ground. As for the scaled old man, the smile on his face froze. He looked at the white-robed young man who was walking towards him with fear. I want to enter the cave dwelling to take a look. Those who are not involved, please leave. Bye. Bai Mu. This person is a void fragmentation old monster. First heavenly layer of void fragmentation realm. I'll fight. If I join forces with the red beast, I can barely defend myself against some void fragmentation old monsters. This person wants to snatch my cave dwelling. It won't be that easy. The scaled old man's face darkened. He was about to use a secret technique to forcefully control the flaming bull to attack the white-robed young man. At this moment, the white-robed young man lifted his finger and pointed down from the air. It was just a casual point of his finger. Moreover, it was tens of thousands of zhang away. However, it felt like his finger was pressing on the old man's chest. The old man's face was filled with shock. Suddenly, he vomited blood and flew backwards. He fell off the bull's back and fainted. Before he fainted, the old man's heart was filled with shock. Bai Mu's strength was far beyond any first heavenly layer void fragmentation realm old monster he had ever seen. Immortal Ascension Pagoda, Level 51. The cave abode on this level was built in the middle of a sea of lightning. Inside the cave abode, there was a lightning cultivator at the Guiyuan Yuan lightning realm. He had defeated several old monsters of the same level with his lightning path divine art and seized the cave abode. He was quite proud of himself. Just as he was feeling proud of himself, the sea of lightning outside the cave suddenly boiled, and lightning flashed everywhere. After a while, the sea of lightning gradually calmed down. The elemental returning lightning cultivator's spiritual sense probed, and a look of shock appeared on his face. However, a young man in white clothes seemed to ignore the might of the sea of lightning. He was stepping on the sea of lightning and walking toward the cave abode calmly. In front of the young man, the lightning split into a silver path. It was as if the sea of lightning was welcoming the young man. The young man's pace was not fast, but with every step he took, circles of lightning ripples would reverberate. Every step he took seemed to be stepping on the Taoist heart of a thunder cultivator, causing his demon soul, which had almost completely turned into thunder, to tremble. Void. Void fragmentation old monster. Furthermore, this old monster's lightning Tao divine art far surpasses my understanding. He is almost a lightning monarch. The elemental returning lightning cultivator knew that the reason why this old monster crossed the sea of lightning was to enter the cave abode. After witnessing the strength of this old monster, the elemental returning lightning cultivator immediately gave up the cave abode and left in a ray of traveling light. He did not dare to fight with this old monster at all. Ning Fan did not know that after he entered the 100 floors of the cave abode, he gradually attracted the attention of most of the cultivators outside the Immortal Ascension Tower. Outside the Immortal Ascension Tower, dozens of old monsters of the Primordial Palace erected a gigantic demon stele. The stele only recorded the names of those who entered the first 100 floors of the cave abode. All the old monsters who entered the Immortal Ascension Tower carried the jade token given by the Primordial Palace. It was their identification. If those who carried the jade token entered the first 100 floors of the cave abode, their names would appear on the demon stele from 1 to 100. The person who was ranked first on the demon stele was an old monster who was a rogue cultivator from the demon sea of the central region. His Dao name was Tan Longzi. He was at the 7th heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. He was the one with the highest cultivation base among all the people who entered the tower this time. Hence, he deserved to occupy the first floor of the cave abode. The people who were ranked 2nd to 5th on the demon stele were experts who were famous in the demon world. If these people were placed in the lower 3 realms, they would certainly be powerful and influential figures. However, in the demon world, they were not the strongest experts. The person who was ranked 6th was He Shishio, who had a mysterious identity. To others, this person's identity was mysterious. To the demon emperor old monsters, it was better for them to keep his identity a secret. From the 7th to the 12th floor, 6 of them were 4 void fragmentation old monsters. From the 13th to the 20th floor, they were all void fragmentation old monsters. After the 20th floor, there were still 2 void fragmentation old monsters. However, they could not get into the first 20 floors of the cave abode. In the end, they could only give up. The occupants of the first 20 floors of the cave abode only changed a few times. After that, they never changed again. In the first 46 floors, the battles between the void fragmentation realm old monsters gradually stopped. The one who guarded the 100th floor of the cave abode was the great elder Zhou Nan of the Primordial Palace. Naturally, no one could snatch the cave abode from him. Between the 47th floor and the 100th floor, the battles between the Absolute Void and Guiyuan Great Void cultivators gradually intensified. Numerous Absolute Void cultivators and Guiyuan Great Void cultivators were fighting for the abode of the first 100 floors. In the beginning, the Absolute Void cultivators who were fighting for the abode would usually be snatched away by Guiyuan Great Void cultivators before they could even warm their seats. After a series of fierce battles, the occupants of the first 100 floors of the cave abode gradually stopped changing. Currently, it was already the 4th night watch period. There were less than 8 hours before the end of the grand competition. Some cultivators closed their eyes and pretended to sleep, waiting for the final result of the grand competition. Some cultivators, on the other hand, were paying attention to the demon's steel with great interest. Every time they saw the occupants of the first 100 floors of the cave abode change, they would comment on it. Look, the occupants of the 54th floor have changed. Venerable Lord Shi Ling of the Western Demon Sea defeated the clan leader of the Waterhawk clan and occupied this floor of the cave abode. Aya, the occupants of the 69th floor of the cave abode have changed. It's the Demon King of the Branch Sea of the Eastern Demon Sea. He has obtained this floor of the cave abode. Oh. Look, the occupants of the 71st floor of the cave abode have changed twice in a row. It seems like the battles on this floor are quite intense. Most of the people who would make such a fuss were low-grade cultivators with unstable temperaments. All the true old monsters understood one thing. The change of occupants of the cave abode was only temporary until the very last moment. The Yuan Emperor and the other demon sovereigns closed their eyes, no longer paying attention to the battles on the 46th floor. To experts at their level, only the battles between Void Fragmentation Realm experts could attract their attention. Strange. That Bai Mu could withstand my attack and destroy my Dao heart. With his strength, he should be able to occupy the first 100 floors of the cave abode. Why haven't I seen his name on the demon's steel until now? Yuan Tong frowned with a gloomy expression. Of course, he was not concerned about Ning Fan. He was just puzzled. Bai Mu, you're just an ant. The competition of the Immortal Ascension Pagoda will end in 8 hours. Everyone will leave the Immortal Ascension Pagoda. At that time, I will avenge you. Don't think about Bai Mu anymore. Quickly follow the mnemonic chant I taught you and restore your Dao heart. The Ape Emperor harumphed with dissatisfaction. Yes. Yuan Tong dared not let his imagination run wild. He immediately closed his eyes and cleared his mind of distracting thoughts. Then, he circulated his qi and chanted the mnemonic chant. At this moment, someone suddenly exclaimed. How? How is this possible? The owner of the 100th floor has changed. In an instant, all the cultivators on the jade platform scanned the demon's steel with their spirit sense. Even the expressions of the Ape Emperor and the other sovereigns changed slightly as they looked at the demon's steel. The 100th floor was supposed to be the most inconspicuous cave abode in the first 100 floors. However, it was the great elder of Yuan Palace who was in charge of this cave abode, which made it very eye-catching. Those who understood the situation guessed that great elder Zhou Nan stayed on the 100th floor because he was too embarrassed to compete with others for the first 20 floors. No one doubted that Zhou Nan had the strength to enter the top 20. No one thought that Zhou Nan's cave abode would be taken away. However, at this moment, Zhou Nan's name on the 100th position on the demon's steel was indeed fading away bit by bit. Who was it? Who took away the cave abode from Senior Zhou Nan? Zhou Nan's name gradually disappeared from the demon's steel. What appeared next was a name that shocked everyone. Bai Mu. How is this possible? Bai Mu is just a void inquiry stage cultivator. How could he have the strength to snatch the cave abode from great elder Zhou Nan? Great waves surged in the hearts of countless old monsters. This was something that was simply impossible, so why did it happen? Could it be that great elder Zhou Nan gave the cave abode to Bai Mu on his own accord? An old monster suddenly voiced out his doubt and looked in the direction of Yuan Emperor. His doubt alerted all the old monsters on the scene and they all looked at Yuan Emperor. Yes. That must be it. Bai Mu most likely had some relationship with Yuan Palace. That was why Zhou Nan gave up the cave abode. It was impossible for Bai Mu to defeat Zhou Nan. Some of the old monsters recalled that Yuan Emperor had stopped the Ape Emperor from entering the Immortal Ascension Tower to capture Bai Mu. At first, these old monsters thought that Yuan Emperor was just trying to protect the participants from being bullied and humiliated. Now, it seemed like Bai Mu probably had some relationship with Yuan Palace. Yuan Emperor frowned but he did not explain. He also had the same thought. He was sure that Zhou Nan had given up the cave abode on purpose. After all, he knew that Zhou Nan had entered the Immortal Ascension Tower for Bai Mu. Is it Zixin's idea for Zhou Nan to give up the cave abode? Does she really like Bai Mu that much? She did not hesitate to let Zhou Nan snatch a cave abode in the first 100 floors and give it to Bai Mu. Just as everyone was guessing, the two words Bai Mu gradually disappeared from the demon stele. After that, no one's name appeared on the 100th position of the demon stele. The cave abode on the 100th floor was actually empty. The cave abode is actually unoccupied. What's going on? Could it be that someone fought with Bai Mu for the cave abode again? In the end, both of them were injured and none of them managed to get it. It was naturally difficult for the cultivators in the outside world to imagine that Ning Fan walked out of the cave abode by himself. He did not care about the cave abode on the 100th floor and he did not plan to stay there for long. However, the others did not know about it. They only knew that whoever obtains the cave abode on the 100th floor would be rewarded with a void fragmentation pill. That was a void fragmentation pill after all. It could increase the success rate of a void fragmentation realm cultivator by 5%. To Ning Fan, who had a void inquiry stage cultivation base, it should be a great temptation, shouldn't it? What exactly happened on the 100th floor? Just as everyone's mind was filled with questions, the cave abode on the 99th floor changed owners. When the two words Bai Mu appeared on the 99th position of the demon stele, countless old monsters' eyes widened in shock. Bai Mu. Why is it Bai Mu again? I get it now. This Bai Mu has given up the cave abode on the 100th floor and went to the 99th floor. However, I don't understand how this Bai Mu, who only has a void inquiry stage cultivation base, has the strength to snatch the 99th floor. Could it be that Zhou Nan is helping him? At this moment, countless cultivators shifted their gazes towards the Yuan sovereign's location. The owner of the 99th floor was an old monster named Guo Yuan from the Fang Wolf Palace in the Eastern Demon Sea. This person was proficient in the broken phase technique. He was already invincible among cultivators at the same level as him. It was impossible for him to be defeated by Ning Fan, who had a void inquiry stage cultivation base. Then, could it be Zhou Nan who defeated this old monster and snatched the cave abode from him? Was it Zhou Nan who snatched the cave abode on the 99th floor and gave it to Ning Fan? As the great elder of the Origin Palace, Zhou Nan purposely sabotaged the fairness of this grand competition just to support Ning Fan? Impossible. The great elder is definitely not this kind of person. He is the host of this grand competition. Even if he enters the Immortal Ascension Tower, he will not be biased towards anyone. A void fragmentation realm cultivator of the Origin Palace defended Zhou Nan with a stern voice. That's right. Senior Zhou has always been straightforward and upright in his actions. Everyone in the entire Northern Demon Sea knows about this. He will definitely not disrupt the fairness of this grand competition just to support a Bai Mu. Some low-level cultivators began to defend Zhou Nan. The Yuan sovereign did not say anything else. He slowly rose to his feet and took out a life token from his storage pouch. He had to give the crowd an explanation so that they would not think that this grand competition was unfair. After all, he was prepared to make friends with the experts of the demon world through this dragon fishing convention. That life token belonged to Zhou Nan. The Yuan sovereign closed his eyes and transmitted a few words to the life token. After a while, he seemed to have received Zhou Nan's reply. He opened his eyes and said to the crowd in an indifferent tone. Zhou Nan did not do anything. It was Bai Mu who snatched the cave abode with his own strength. The Yuan sovereign's explanation could naturally convince most of the old monsters. However, there were also some who disagreed. Bai Mu is just a void inquiry stage cultivator. How could he defeat Guo Yuan Taishu with his own strength? Their words naturally could not escape the Yuan sovereign's spirit sense. The Yuan sovereign wore a complicated expression. Even he found it hard to believe what Zhou Nan had told him. But now, he had to inform the crowd and appease them. He is not a void inquiry stage cultivator. He is, a void fragmentation realm expert. Bai Mu's cultivation base is at the first heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. What? The Yuan sovereign's words made the expressions of countless old monsters change. Void fragmentation realm. Void fragmentation realm. They did not expect that the unknown Bai Mu was actually a dignified void fragmentation realm expert. That trash who was once banished by the Light Feather clan had actually become a void fragmentation realm old monster. Bai Mu is a void fragmentation realm expert. How could this be? How is this possible? Yuan Tong's Dao heart was being repaired to a critical moment, and when he suddenly heard this news, his expression immediately turned ugly. In the first place, he did not believe that Ning Fan was a void inquiry stage cultivator. No void inquiry stage cultivator could defeat him. However, he refused to believe that Ning Fan was a void fragmentation old monster. Even though there were hundreds of void fragmentation realm experts in the demon world, which one of them was not a famous figure in the world? He was a primordial returning realm cultivator and he was only a step away from attaining the void fragmentation realm. However, this step was extremely difficult for him to cross. The void fragmentation realm was a high mountain that cultivators below the void fragmentation realm could only dream of but never reach. Insurmountable. There were tens of thousands of void refinement realm experts in the entire demon world. However, only a few hundred of them could break through to the void fragmentation realm. How is it possible that Bai Mu has a void fragmentation realm cultivation base? I don't believe it. Yuan Tong wasn't the only one who didn't believe it. Many cultivators were doubtful too. But what happened next forced them to believe it. The owner of the 98th level of the cave abode had changed, and the new occupant was Bai Mu. The owner of the 97th level of the cave abode had changed, and the new occupant was Bai Mu. The owner of the 96th level of the cave abode had changed, and the new occupant was Bai Mu. Bai Mu's name kept appearing on the demon stele, replacing the original owner of the cave abode. Then, it disappeared and reappeared again, replacing the next owner. His name kept appearing until it reached the 47th position. Only then did it temporarily stop appearing and no longer disappeared. In just a short period of time, he went from the 100th level to the 47th level and defeated all the primordial returning realm cultivators. At this moment, no one doubted that Ning Fan's cultivation base was at the first heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. Without such a strong cultivation base, who could defeat all the primordial returning realm experts in the first 100 levels? Oh! I didn't expect that there would be such a strong expert hidden in this grand competition. Is it Bai Mu? The fox sovereign smiled seductively. Oh! The cauldron that I'm interested in is Bai Mu. He's a void fragmentation realm expert. Hee hee. Good. Now, it's even better. The snake sovereign's apricot eyes flashed with a cold light. Then, she looked to her side. At her side, someone was taking out a jade slip which had Ning Fan's current appearance engraved on it. That person crushed the jade slip. Light and shadow appeared in the air, showing Ning Fan's appearance to the crowd. Bai Mu, huh? It is said that this person's bone age is less than 10,000 years. The Green Sovereign was holding a jade slip which he had just ordered his subordinates to collect. When Ning Fan consumed the appearance-changing pill, he disguised his bone age as 20,000 years. When he disguised his cultivation base as a void inquiry stage cultivator, his bone age naturally changed slightly to 6,000 years. After all, no void inquiry stage cultivator could live for 20,000 years. As soon as the Green Sovereign said that, it immediately shocked countless people. That Bai Mu's bone age is less than 10,000 years, but he has already cultivated to the void fragmentation realm. How is this possible? Could it be that this person is not the rumored trash of the Light Feather clan but a genius that only appears once every 100,000 years in the demon world? Nonsense. How can someone who can cultivate to the void fragmentation realm be a trash? Perhaps this Bai Mu's previous bad reputation and weak strength are just a disguise that he used to conceal his strength and bide his time. Moreover, he might have purposely expelled him from the Light Feather clan. Is he trying to fade away from the world's sight and quietly enter the void fragmentation realm? Even though his bone age of 6,000 years was fake, Ning Fan's heaven-defying aptitude was not fake. Ning Fan's true bone age was only 1,000 years, which was even lower than 6,000 years. He had seized countless opportunities with his own hands and made the legend of a void fragmentation realm cultivator who lived for 1,000 years become a reality. It was impossible for others to know about this. If they do, they would certainly be even more shocked. The Yuan sovereign's eyes flickered. His opinion of Ning Fan gradually changed. Originally, he thought that Ning Fan was not a good match for his daughter because of his bad reputation. Now, it seemed like Ning Fan's bad reputation and weak strength might just be a disguise. Perhaps, letting Bai Mu be Zixin's Dao companion might not be a bad choice. The Yuan sovereign thought to himself. After Yuan Tong confirmed that Ning Fan was a void fragmentation realm cultivator, he directly spurted out a mouthful of blood. His Dao heart that had recovered a little shattered again. He is a void fragmentation realm cultivator. A strong sense of defeat rose in Yuan Tong's heart. If it wasn't for his master, he would not be qualified to be Ning Fan's enemy at all. Tong heir, don't destroy your own Dao heart. Remember, Bai Mu isn't that great. Even if he is a void fragmentation realm cultivator and surpasses you in every aspect, there is one thing that you can't compare to. Remember. Your master is the strongest demon sovereign of this generation. You are no match for him, but I can help you eradicate him. The ape sovereign's eyes flashed with a hint of killing intent. He kept belittling Ning Fan not because he looked down on him but because he wanted to rebuild Yuan Tong's confidence through this method. The abilities of the ape hall were all based on battle intent. If one loses his confidence, he would lose the courage to challenge others. Then, where would his battle intent come from? Self-destruction of the great Tao. Yuan Tong was the ape sovereign's favorite disciple. He was arrogant, domineering and considered himself to be extraordinary. He was the most suitable candidate to cultivate the cultivation methods of the ape hall. If Yuan Tong had never met Ning Fan, if Yuan Tong could continue to fight and win in a domineering manner, his achievements in this life would definitely not be lower than those of the previous ape sovereigns. No matter what, I will help you take his life. As long as he is alive, your Dao heart won't be able to recover. His shadow will eventually be left behind. Bai Mu, ha. Humph. No matter who attacked first, as long as you hurt my disciple, you deserve to die. The Ape King revealed a domineering look. Now, he only wanted to do one thing, and that was to wait for the end of the grand competition. When Ning Fan came out, he would kill him. The Ape Emperor closed his eyes and stopped paying attention to the demon steel. In his opinion, even if Ning Fan's cultivation base was at the first heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm, he would still have to stop at the 47th level. Below them, the ones guarding the cave residences were all void fragmentation realm experts. He was only at the first heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. It was the lowest level among the 9 heavenly layers of the void fragmentation realm. Logically speaking, Ning Fan would probably not continue to challenge other void fragmentation realm cultivators without knowing what was good for him. There's no need to watch. This kid will definitely stop at the 47th floor. As soon as the Ape King finished speaking, he suddenly opened his eyes in disbelief. On the demon steel, the 2 words, Bai Mu, gradually faded and eventually disappeared. A moment later, on the 46th floor, the name of the Northern Demon Sea's golden photon was replaced by Bai Mu's name. In just a short moment, Ning Fan had defeated Jin Guangdian, who was also at the first heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm, and snatched the cave dwelling away. How is this possible? The 45th floor, 44th floor, 43rd floor. All the way to the 30th floor. Each of the first heavenly layer void fragmentation realm old monsters was no match for Ning Fan. All of them were instantly defeated. On the other hand, Ning Fan's name kept changing positions, rising all the way to the 30th place on the demon steel. Senior Whitewood is invincible in the demolishing level. Countless low-level cultivators blurted. On the 30th level of the Immortal Ascension Pagoda, Ning Fan kept Emperor Xia's sword and stepped into the 30th floor of the abode. He was not in a hurry to comprehend the mysteries on this floor. Instead, he consumed some pills and adjusted his breathing, trying to recover some of his magic power. To him, defeating cultivators at the primordial returning realm consecutively was a piece of cake. It was also not difficult for him to defeat cultivators at the first heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. However, it would consume a lot of his magic power. With Emperor Xia's sword in his hand, Ning Fan only needed to activate 30% of the sword light and he would be able to scare away any of the old monsters who were guarding the cave dwelling. From the 30th floor and below, there were at least second heavenly layer void fragmentation realm old monsters guarding the place. Thus, they were not to be underestimated. If Ning Fan wants to go all the way down, he must not be careless. He must first adjust his breathing. He didn't know that the outside world was in chaos because of him. He also didn't know that along the way, the old monsters on each floor were sighing in despair. They had suffered a great blow. From the 500th floor all the way to the 31st floor, those old monsters who had their abode taken away eventually ran back and quietly occupied their abode after seeing that Ning Fan did not have the intention to occupy their abode for a long time. However, they would never be able to forget the fact that they were defeated by Ning Fan for the rest of their lives. Especially those first heavenly layer void fragmentation realm old monsters who thought highly of themselves. After being defeated by Ning Fan with a single sword strike, it was inevitable that a shadow would be cast in their hearts. They were all at the first heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm, but they were actually so much weaker than Ning Fan. I can't compete with him. I can't compete with him. Who said that Bai Mu is trash? He clearly didn't use his full strength in that sword strike. If he used his full strength, I'm afraid even the two old monsters of the Shattering Realm wouldn't be able to withstand it. On the 46th floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower, Jin Guangzi returned to his cave dwelling. He adjusted his breathing while sighing. There were quite a number of people who were sighing like him. Zhou Nan followed behind Ning Fan. His eyes were filled with astonishment. When Ning Fan held Emperor Xia's sword in his hand, even a dignified fourth heavenly layer void fragmentation realm like him felt a little threatened by the sword light. This young man's strength seems to be above my expectation. Perhaps he won't stop at the 30th floor. Just as Zhou Nan was thinking about this, he saw that Ning Fan had already finished adjusting his breathing. He had finished his comprehension in the cave dwelling and was heading towards the 29th floor. As expected, he still wants to challenge the two old monsters of the Shattering Realm. Zhou Nan's eyes lit up. The void fragmentation realm had a strict hierarchy. Other than a few heaven-defying experts, there were very few people who could surpass their cultivation base and win. Even an unrivaled cultivator at the first heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm would find it hard to defeat an ordinary two old monsters of the Shattering Realm. Zhou Nan really wanted to see whether Ning Fan could continue to sweep through the Immortal Ascension Tower with his first heavenly layer void fragmentation realm cultivation base. Chapter 643. Immortal Ascension Pagoda, Level 35. Yun Youmu had a complicated expression on his face. The moment he saw Emperor Xia's sword, he finally understood why he felt such a sense of familiarity towards Bai Mu. That's not Bai Mu, it's Ning Fan. Appearances could be faked, aura could be altered, cultivation could be fabricated, but there was no way there could be a second sword that looked exactly like Emperor Xia's sword. Ning Fan had used Emperor Xia's sword to kill King Lanling. In the battle against Yun Xiaoxiang, Ning Fan had also used Emperor Xia's sword. Yun Youmu had seen this sword at close range twice, so it was impossible for him to mistake it for someone else. This sword still gave him a lingering fear. Bai Mu is Ning Fan. Ning Fan is Bai Mu. The Rain Sovereign, Ning Fan, has actually sneaked into the demon world. Is he one of the helpers that the young lord of the godly void pavilion found? If it's possible, I really want to tell Hidaozi that this person can't be underestimated. Unfortunately, I can't say it. I can't tell anyone about his identity. Yun Yomu smiled bitterly. He could not help but recall Ning Fan's meaningful smile when he came to this cave dwelling. With Yun Yomu's shrewdness, he could naturally tell that Ning Fan had purposely revealed his identity to him. Ning Fan was certain that Yun Yomu would not dare to reveal his identity. After all, Ning Fan had already planted a demon seal on Yun Yomu. He could control his life and death at will. If Ning Fan encounters danger and dies, Yun Yomu who has been planted with a demon seal would also not be able to escape death. If Yun Yomu enraged Ning Fan would only need a single thought to take his life. Even Imperial Father is no match for him. I'm afraid He Shirshio is no match for him. Immortal Ascension Pagoda, 29th level. The one guarding this level of the cave abode was the patriarch of the End Goat clan, End Monarch. This person was wearing a sheepskin cloak and had 2 curved horns on his head. His white beard reached the ground and his eyes were tightly shut. He was currently adjusting his breathing inside the cave. His cultivation base was at the 2nd heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. Moreover, he was proficient in 2 great void fragmentation realm abilities, incarnation technique and soul extraction. His Mo Yang incarnation was extremely difficult to deal with, it had the strange ability to absorb other people's demonic power. His mastery of the soul extraction art was not high, but it could still increase his demonic power by almost 10%. If it was a second shattering cultivator who did not know his background, he would usually suck out all of his demon power and easily defeat him. This person was not a weakling among those at the 2nd heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. There's less than 8 hours left before the end of the grand competition. What a pity, this old man's strength isn't enough to occupy the first 20 levels of the abode. It seems like I'm not fated to obtain the essence clear pill. While sighing, the last Heaven Lord suddenly opened his eyes, revealing a sharp gaze. Then, he snorted in disdain. Who is this kid? With just a cultivation base at the 1st heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm, you want to seize my abode? Other than a handful of one-demolishing cultivators in the demon realm, no one has ever dared to look down on me like this. Last Heaven Monarch's expression was gloomy, and his body suddenly turned into a white light that flew out of the cave and appeared in the vast desert outside the cave. His old and turbid eyes stared straight ahead. In that direction, a white-robed young man was walking over step by step. Every step he took was gathering his aura. Light Wing Clan, by Mu. The youth reported his name indifferently, not bothering to waste any time. He could tell with a single glance that the last Heaven Monarch before him was an old monster that thought highly of himself and would absolutely not give up his abode so easily, so he could only seize it in battle. Last Heaven Monarch of the last Yang clan. The last Heaven Monarch also did not have the intention to waste any time. After reporting his name, the last Heaven Monarch suddenly shook his body and transformed into the incarnation of Mo Yang. His body grew slightly taller and his robes disappeared. Gray fur like that of a demon beast grew on his body. An incarnation technique, huh? Ning Fan's eyes turned slightly cold. With just a glance, he could tell that this incarnation of Mo Yang was a little strange. However, he could not tell what it was exactly. I'll have to be careful when dealing with him. Ning Fan's heart was already filled with alertness, paying attention to every change in his surroundings. Soul extraction. The last Heaven Monarch clawed at the ground with one of his claws, extracting the Earth Soul from the ground and swallowing it. After swallowing the Earth Soul, his demon power immediately increased by more than 10% and his chi became much stronger. Void Technique, Goat Devouring. The last Heaven Monarch's eyes suddenly turned sharp. He performed a hand seal with all 10 of his fingers and a gigantic purple-horned goat shadow appeared behind him. All of a sudden, the ground of the entire abode began to shake in a strange manner. Countless wriggling white threads suddenly pierced through the ground and entangled Ning Fan. Those white threads moved extremely fast and could even teleport. Ning Fan hurriedly escaped from his original spot. When he appeared in the sky, his hands and feet were still entangled by some white threads. At the moment when his hands and feet were entangled by the white threads, Ning Fan immediately felt that his magic power began to flow away rapidly. It was all absorbed by the white threads. Devour. 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 The last heaven monarch's eyes revealed a rather proud look. Any cultivator who was entangled by his Mo-Yang thread would find it hard to escape. In the end, all of their demon power would be sucked dry. This thread was not afraid of being slashed by ordinary blades and swords or being burned by ordinary spiritual flames. Ordinary methods would not be able to break this thread. Unfortunately, the last heaven monarch did not know that Ning Fan had as many extraordinary methods as he wanted. The secret technique of the Mo-Yang clan. Goat devouring technique, huh? Zhou Nan, who had quietly followed Ning Fan, let out a soft sigh. When he was young, he had once fought against the Mo-Yang clan and suffered a lot from this technique. If Bai Mu can't handle this technique, I'll lend him a hand. Just as this thought flashed across Zhou Nan's mind, his eyes suddenly lit up at the next moment. This is... what a strong flame! It can even burn the Mo-Yang thread. All of a sudden, Ning Fan, who was entangled by the white threads, was engulfed in black devil flames that soared into the sky. The grade of this black devil flame had clearly reached the high grade 7th grade. It was a flame that was formed by the fusion of 24 types of heavenly cold flames and earth flames. Moreover, it had also been infused with the cold chi of other spiritual flames. The grade of this flame was the best in the rain world. Even though it might not be the best in the demon world, it could still be ranked among the top 3 in the demon world. With Zhou Nan's eyesight, he could naturally tell that this flame was not any flame that he knew. If that was the case, this flame must be a special flame that Ning Fan cultivated using a special cultivation method. Burn. Ning Fan only uttered a single word and the black flame immediately spread out from his body. It burned tens of thousands of li above the desert. Countless Mo-Yang threads were burned into ashes in the black flame. With Ning Fan's current cultivation base, ordinary void fragmentation realm cultivators were not his match at all when he uses the yin-yang flame. If Ning Fan's cultivation base is a few more levels higher, attaining the 4th heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm, he could directly use this flame to fight against the Rain Sovereign. What a strong flame! No wonder this young man dared to come and seize my abode even though he is just at the 1st heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. It turns out that he has something to rely on. However, I also have a way to break your flame. Fire-devouring gourd, keep. Without saying a word, the last heaven lord took out a fiery red gourd. As soon as the gourd was taken out, it immediately absorbed the raging flames. The sea of flames that stretched across the entire heavenly dwelling gradually began to weaken. Ning Fan glanced at the fire-devouring gourd. It was a mid-grade immortal void realm magic treasure which came with the ability to restrain fire. Using the devil flame at the 1st heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm was no match for the might of this gourd. His eyes gradually turned cold. Black chi swirled around his body. He took a step forward and transformed into his black robes. Before his spirit sense entered the 2nd heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm, the increase in his cultivation base when he transformed into his incarnation was not as great as before, but it was not small either. He once again pointed his finger at the void and shattered it. Then, he made a grabbing motion with his 5 fingers and pulled out the void soul, swallowing it. All of a sudden, his 1st heavenly layer void fragmentation realm aura force rose rapidly, breaking through the 2nd heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm and advancing towards the peak of the 2nd heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. He was still only 1 step away from attaining the 3rd heavenly layer. I still can't use these 2 divine abilities to break through to the 3rd demolishing level. But it's enough to deal with this guy. Burn. Ning Fan's current chi was much stronger than Mo Tianjuan's. He changed his hand seal, and the demonic fire that was sucked into the gourd immediately went berserk, trying its best to burn the fire-swallowing gourd. As the spellcaster's aura grew stronger, the power of the demonic flames naturally increased as well. After a breath of time, the fire-swallowing gourd was like a piece of red-hot iron, its red glow piercing the eyes. 2 breaths later, the fire-swallowing gourd began to sizzle, but there was no sound of explosion. 3 breaths. The fire-devouring gourd suddenly cracked and shattered. The moment the gourd shattered, the black flames transformed into a fire dragon and flew out of the gourd's cracks, burning the remains of the gourd to ashes. Gourd, my gourd. Last Heaven Monarch's expression changed greatly. He did not expect that Ning Fan was also proficient in the soul extraction technique and incarnation transformation technique. He also did not expect that Ning Fan could actually extract the void soul, and his attainment in this technique was even higher than his. He did not have time to think further because as Ning Fan pointed at him, the 9 black fire dragons roared and attacked him. Fellow Taoist, please stop. I admit defeat. How could Last Heaven Monarch still care about the gourd? He directly used the earth escape technique and fled without a trace, not daring to face the attacks of the 9 fire dragons head-on. Even though he fled in a hurry, he still suffered quite a lot of burns. Otherwise, Last Heaven Monarch would have at least been severely injured by the yin-yang flame that Ning Fan displayed with all his might. Seeing that Last Heaven Monarch had fled, Ning Fan did not chase after him. He withdrew the devil flames and stepped into the cave dwelling, using the primitive Emperor Jade to observe the Tao comprehension inside. There were already a total of 471 Tao marks of life and death on his primordial spirit. As his Tao comprehension became deeper and deeper, ordinary Tao comprehension would not be able to increase the number of Tao marks. Fortunately, the design of the Immortal Ascension Tower had always made the Tao comprehension deeper and deeper with each floor. In this way, the number of Tao marks in the 500 floors of the Immortal Ascension Tower would certainly exceed 500. He actually won in such a short time. Zhou Nan's eyes were filled with astonishment. In his opinion, Ning Fan, who had displayed the soul extraction and incarnation technique, might not necessarily lose even if he were to fight against the 3 old monsters of the body-shattering realm. Perhaps Ning Fan might be able to enter the top 20 floors of the Immortal Ascension realm. If I am only at the 3 body-shattering realm, I might not be a match for this young man. Based on this young man might really be able to enter the top 20 floors. After observing the Tao comprehension, Ning Fan did not stay for long. In a flash, he flew towards the 28th floor. Using the yin-yang flame to attack the enemy would consume a lot of magic power. It would be fine if it was just a single battle. However, it was not suitable to continue using the yin-yang flame in a situation like this. Ning Fan patted his storage pouch and took out Emperor Xia's sword. The body of the sword was cold and the faint heartbeats of the 5 people could be heard. Those were the heartbeats of the 5 sword spirits. They were hiding inside the sword, trying to help Ning Fan control the sword. Come out. The current me can control this sword with ease. From today onwards, you don't need to stay inside the body of the sword. Ning Fan said with a hint of heartache. He knew that with the cultivation base of the 5 sword spirits, it was actually very difficult to control this sword. It was a hard and tiring job. In the past, he had no choice but to let the 5 little girls do the hard work. Now that Ning Fan had fully unleashed his combat power and cultivated the sword intent of Emperor Xia's sword, he could control the sword with ease even without the help of the 5 sword spirits. If that was the case, there was no need to trouble the 5 sword spirits. Wah! Little Fan Fan doesn't want Jingjing anymore. Jingjing is so sad. The first sword spirit left the body of the sword in tears and ran back into the sword pouch. Wah! Little Fan Fan doesn't want Momo anymore. Momo is even sadder than Jingjing. The second sword spirit ran back into the sword pouch in tears. Wah! Little Fan Fan doesn't want Shui Shui anymore. Shui Shui doesn't want to be with you anymore. Humph! The third sword spirit ran back in tears. Wah! Little Fan Fan doesn't want Hua Hua anymore. Hua Hua will never do this and that with you again. The fourth sword spirit ran back into the sword pouch while babbling nonsense. It seemed like she had never done anything with Ning Fan. Wah, wah, wah. The little stutterer couldn't finish his sentence. He was so anxious that he started crying. Inside the sword pouch, the cries of the 5 little girls could not stop coming out. Ning Fan stopped his movement light and rubbed his head, feeling a slight headache. He just wanted the 5 sword spirits to have a rest. They seemed to have misunderstood that he was going to abandon them. Do these 5 little girls have fragile hearts? How could they be so fragile? I won't abandon you. Ning Fan explained helplessly. Children always needed to be coaxed. Really? The crying stopped and the little girls became lively again. Really? Can you all sleep for a while? Don't make a fuss. Ning Fan gave an order and the 5 chatterboxes immediately shut up obediently and went to sleep. After comforting the 5 little girls, Ning Fan continued to fly to the 28th floor. The person guarding the 28th floor was an old monk wearing a monastic robe. He was a Zen cultivator and there were many types of Zen cultivators. Some of them tempered their physical bodies and their strength was comparable to gods and devils. Some of them tempered their divine abilities and their techniques were sumaru, breaking all laws. Of course, there were also people like this person who cultivated the negative karma of the sword. There was a blood-red flying sword on the demon monk's lap. He closed his eyes and meditated. His heart was as calm as still water. However, at a certain moment, he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with blood-red light and he praised coldly with a hoarse voice. What a heavy baleful chi! What a strong sword intent! What a powerful devil lord! The demon monk suddenly rose to his feet and put his palms together. He held the blood-red sword in his other hand and walked out of the cave. Far away from the cave, there was also a young man in black robes. He was holding a golden sword in his hand and was walking towards him step by step. The baleful chi in the young man's eyes was so strong that it could shake heaven and earth. The sword intent around the young man was so strong that it could shake people's hearts. Every step of the young man was brewing sword force. Every step he took could create golden ripples on the ground. Fellow Taoist, are you here to rob my cave? The demon monk asked coldly. Yes. The black-robed Ning Fan was a man of few words. The baleful chi in his eyes slightly dispersed and was replaced by an extremely pure golden sword light. If you defeat me, the cave will be yours. The demon monk felt a heavy pressure from Ning Fan's body. Even though he was a second heavenly layer void fragmentation realm cultivator, Ning Fan's current chi was much stronger than his. He was just a tiny bit away from attaining the 3rd heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. As you wish. Ning Fan's footsteps gradually slowed down. However, his sword force was getting stronger and stronger. He was trying to put himself in Yun Tianjue's shoes. In his mind, the endless sword mantra of the myriad sword style was reverberating repeatedly. The myriad sword style was a void fragmentation realm sword technique. It was one of the 3 great sword techniques of Yun Tianjue. Ning Fan's cultivation base was already slowly increasing. It was enough for him to completely unleash the full power of the myriad sword style. With Emperor Xia's sword and its sword intent, coupled with the myriad sword style, he was confident that he could crush all of the 2 groups of cultivators with a single sword attack. I can't wait any longer. When his sword force reaches its peak, I will definitely lose. Blood Lotus style. The demon monk suddenly raised his sword. Blood-red sword intent soared around his body and a gigantic shadow of a blood-red bodhisattva appeared behind him. The bodhisattva stepped on a blood-red lotus. As the demon monk's sword moved, the blood-red lotus petals began to wither. Every time a lotus petal withered, the demon monk's sword light would become slightly stronger. At this moment, the demon monk's flying sword was glowing with dark red blood light. It even emitted a hint of the smell of blood and the fragrance of the lotus. The entire heavenly dwelling suddenly trembled violently as if it was going to collapse at any moment. The demon monk abruptly raised his blood sword. The sword suddenly turned into hundreds of millions of rays of blood light and exploded from the center like a blooming lotus. Hundreds of millions of rays of sharp sword light slashed down, as if they wanted to cut Ning Fan into minced meat. Ning Fan sighed. With this demon monk's obstruction, he could not complete the 9 steps in the end. He could not raise his sword force to its peak. Even so, this sword style was enough to defeat this demon monk with a single sword attack. Sword light flashed in Ning Fan's eyes. At this moment, his entire body seemed to have turned into an immortal sword. He raised his hand and pointed it at the sky with Emperor Xia's sword. Then, the sword slashed down. The entire world seemed to have become still as if the power of this sword was the only thing left. In an instant, the sky of the heavenly dwelling was dyed pure gold by the sword light. The golden sky was suddenly raining, and countless golden sword lights fell from the sky. 1 ray, 10 rays, 100 rays, 1,000 rays. 10,000 rays, 100,000 rays, 1,000,000 rays, 10 million rays. In the end, the 10 million rays of sword light were divided into 100 million rays, turning into a rain of 1 billion rays. The reason why Ning Fan put himself in Yun Tianjue's shoes was to comprehend the essence of the myriad sword art. Then, he abandoned Yun Tianjue's sword style and only kept the essence, turning it into his own myriad sword style. As a matter of fact, the sword styles of Yun Tianjue's sword devil inheritance should be different depending on who uses them. In the past, Ning Fan was just constantly imitating Yun Tianjue's sword style. However, it was not Ning Fan's own sword style after all. At this moment, Ning Fan could be considered to have truly displayed the myriad sword style that belonged to him. As the sword fell, the entire world turned silent. The blood lotus sword light was drowned by the golden sword rain and shattered. The golden sword rain fell on the ground, turning the entire heavenly dwelling into ruins. Only the abode was not destroyed. The old demon monk seemed to be able to hear his own heartbeat. His eyes were filled with astonishment. When the overwhelming golden sword rain slashed down, he could only activate the blood lotus sword light to protect his body. The feeling that the sword rain that filled the sky gave him was too dangerous. Chi! 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 The blood lotus sword light was destroyed one after another. Countless golden sword rain penetrated the body of the old demon monk, causing him to suffer serious injuries. Ning Fan still showed mercy. Otherwise, even if his sword force was not at its peak, it would be enough to kill the old demon monk. The old demon monk looked at Ning Fan in shock. Then, he let out a bitter smile and fainted on the ground. Ning Fan did not look at the old demon monk again. He held his sword and entered the abode. After tens of breaths, he flew towards the 27th floor. 1 billion golden sword rain followed behind him. When he entered the 27th floor, it almost scared the 2 old monsters who were guarding the abode to death. What a strong sword light! I'm not his match. However, running away without fighting is not my principle. I can't avoid this battle. The 2 old monsters was holding a treasured fan magic treasure. He raised his hand and raised it towards the sky. Then, he swung it at Ning Fan's head. There was a faint sound of mountains and rivers crashing down. This fan was called the Mountain and River Fan. It was considered a decent magic treasure. However, it could not withstand the 1 billion sword rain. When Ning Fan defeated the old demon monk, his sword force had reached its peak. He waved his golden sword. Without even looking at the treasured fan, he raised his hand and swung his sword. 1 slash. 10,000 swords fell. The sword rain was like a waterfall. The treasured fan was no match for the sword rain. It instantly shattered and its power was destroyed. As for the 2 old monsters, he was directly swept to the ground by Ning Fan's sword. He knelt on one knee and his body was covered in blood. However, he was still alive. When the sword rain fell, the ground in the heavenly dwelling was still collapsing. Countless mountains were flattened by the sword light. The two old monsters sighed. They stood up and cupped their fists at Ning Fan. "Fellow Taoist, thank you for showing mercy." Then, without any hesitation, he turned into a ray of light and flew towards the next floor. He no longer dared to compete with Ning Fan for the abode. Even a cultivator at the third break realm might not be able to withstand a single sword attack from this person. "I'm not his match." Sigh, the 26th floor, the 25th floor, the 24th floor, the 23rd floor. Along the way, Ning Fan defeated all the cultivators at the second break realm with a single sword attack. Every time he defeated someone, his sword force would become slightly stronger. No one at the second break realm could withstand a single sword attack from him. He stepped on the 1 billion sword rain and finally walked out of the abode on the 23rd floor, flying towards the 22nd floor. The one guarding the 22nd floor was a cultivator at the third heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. Ning Fan knew where the bottom line of his strength was. The Battle of Shattering 3 would be a bitter struggle. Outside the Immortal Ascension Pagoda, when Bai Mu's name appeared on the 23rd position on the demon tablet, countless cultivators were dumbfounded. All the cultivators in the Immortal Ascension Tower had been defeated by him alone. As for Ning Fan, he was still heading towards the 22nd level, attempting to challenge the cultivators of the Broken Three realm. Is old ancestor Bai Mu really at the first heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm? Countless low-level cultivators addressed Bai Mu as patriarch. They were already in awe of the two words white wood. The Yuan Emperor and the other demon emperors locked their divine wills on the demon steel. They wanted to know if the 22nd level of the cave abode would also change its owner. Under normal circumstances, a cultivator at the first heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm would not be able to fight against a cultivator at the third heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. However, Ning Fan's strength was enough to defeat a cultivator at the second heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. The eyes of the Ape Emperor and the hundreds of experts he brought with him were gloomy. What's going on? Tan Zixin arrived at the North Heaven City at the right time and arrived at the bottom of the Immortal Ascension Tower. She took a glance at the demon steel and was instantly stunned on the spot. The 23rd floor. Bai Mu is actually so powerful that he could obtain the cave abode of this floor. How? How is this possible? Isn't he a void inquiry stage cultivator? How could he defeat a void fragmentation realm cultivator? This lady doesn't seem to know that old ancestor Bai Mu's cultivation base isn't at the void inquiry stage but the first heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. Moreover, his strength is extremely powerful, enough to defeat a group of cultivators of the Broken Two realm. TSK. From today onwards, old ancestor Bai Mu's name will surely resound in the demon world. A low-level cultivator who did not know Tan Zixin's identity explained to her. What? Bai Mu is actually a void fragmentation realm cultivator? Tan Zixin was extremely shocked at first. Then, she revealed an expression of joy. If Ning Fan was really a void fragmentation realm cultivator and if he really had the ability to harmonize yin and yang, not only would Elder's injuries be completely healed, he would also have a higher chance of becoming an immortal. I wonder how Uncle Zhou's investigation is going. I hope Bai Mu is the person I'm looking for. I hope everything goes as I wish. I really don't want Elder to die. Chapter 644. Ning Fan knew where his bottom line was. He had defeated Yun Xiaoxiang by relying on the might of Lei Zhenzi. He had defeated the Vine Sovereign, the Rain Sovereign, the Moksha Sovereign, the Cloud Lion, and the Sect Master of the Three Realms by relying on external forces. His true strength was enough to crush a second demolisher, but would be limited to a third demolisher. Ning Fan had the strength to fight against a cultivator of the third break realm, but it was hard to tell who would win. If I can win, then I will fight with my own strength. If I can't win, then even if I have to borrow the power of external objects, I will seize all the caves here. Ning Fan only cared about the result. He did not care about the process. He stepped on the rain of 1 billion swords and flew toward the 22nd floor. The 22nd level of the grotto heaven was a vast ocean, and the grotto heaven was built on the seabed. The one guarding the 22nd floor was an old man who cultivated the demonic blood of the black tortoise. People called him Old Monster Dong Lin. This was a fat old man with a rather comical appearance. He had suffered some injuries in the process of fighting for the first 20 levels of the cave. He was a demon cultivator at the third heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. The combat power of his black tortoise demon blood was not to be underestimated. He was recuperating when he suddenly opened his eyes, revealing an indifferent expression. Another resident snatcher. Old Monster Dong Lin stood up slowly with a slightly solemn expression. He walked out of the cave and parted the sea. He stood on the surface of the sea and raised his head to look at the sky. His expression became even more serious. In the sky, a black-robed young man stepped on 1 billion sword lights, and like an unstoppable sharp sword, he rushed over. With Old Monster Donglin's insight, he could tell with a single glance that this young man couldn't be underestimated. The young man's sword momentum was too strong. That sword aura was the undefeatable aura that he had accumulated after defeating all the cultivators along the way. This person's cultivation base is clearly only at the first heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. However, by relying on the two great abilities of incarnation and soul extraction, his aura is infinitely close to the third heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. This man is stepping on 1 billion sword lights. If all of them were to attack at the same time, even I would have a hard time dealing with them. This kid's strength is comparable to a 3-breaking realm cultivator. If this old man wasn't injured, I would have a 50-50 chance of winning against him. But now, my chance of winning is less than 30%. Even if the odds aren't high, I won't give up my abode so easily. The strong had their own pride and arrogance. Old Monster Dong Lin didn't have a striking appearance, but he wasn't one to admit defeat. I am Dong Lin. Who are you? Old Monster Dong Lin asked in a deep voice. Light Wing Clan, by Mu. Ning Fan suddenly retracted his sword light in the sky and swept his gaze across Old Monster Dong Lin, who was standing on the surface of the sea. This gaze was as sharp as a sword. If an ordinary cultivator was pierced by this gaze, they would definitely feel a sharp pain in their sea of consciousness. However, what kind of person was Old Monster Dong Lin? He naturally would not be afraid of Ning Fan's gaze. Fellow Taoist Bai, right? Let's see if I'm stronger, or if you're stronger. Quick! Old Monster Dong Lin didn't say a word and directly flicked his sleeve, releasing a blue ray of light. It was a meter-long blue ruler treasure known as the Surging Wave Ruler. It was Old Monster Dong Lin's natal magic treasure and also a primordial divine weapon. As soon as the ruler appeared, it immediately caused huge waves to surge above the entire sea. As soon as the ruler soared into the sky, it immediately split into 1 million ruler shadows and attacked Ning Fan. This ruler shadow was really powerful. Even an ordinary cultivator at the third heaven destruction realm would be hit by the ruler if they were not careful, and their skin and flesh would be torn apart. Even Ning Fan, who had a physical body at the peak reckless devil realm which was comparable to the first heavenly layer of the nirvana realm, did not dare to take this ruler head-on. Without saying a word, Ning Fan pointed his long sword forward and the 1 billion sword rain immediately slashed at the 1 million ruler shadows. Even though the sword rain was numerous and the ruler's shadows were few, this exchange of blows was actually a draw. The 1 billion sword rain was pushed back while the 1 million ruler shadows were also pushed back. Old Monster Dong Lin did not say much, as if he had already expected such a situation. He changed his hand seal and the 1 million ruler shadows merged into one, condensing into the shadow of a 10,000 zhang large icy black tortoise. The black tortoise opened its mouth and sucked all the surging sword light into its mouth. The myriad sword style isn't that easy to break. Explode! Ning Fan formed a hand seal with one hand and changed his hand seal. The golden sword light that was swallowed into the black tortoise's mouth exploded one after another. As soon as the sword light exploded, the black tortoise immediately showed a painful expression. It let out a miserable shriek and its shadow gradually turned faint. In the end, it turned back into the ruler and fell from the sky. Its power was slightly reduced. Old Monster Dong Lin's eyes darkened. He kept the ruler and took out 49 banners which were glowing with cold light. He then tossed all of them into the sky. At the moment when all the banners were tossed out, Old Monster Dong Lin suddenly formed a hand seal and said with a respectful tone, "Summon the ancestral spirit." As soon as he finished speaking, the 49 banners shot out rays of cold light at the same time. They gathered at one spot and condensed into the shadow of a black-armored giant. The giant did not have a nose or mouth. He only had a single eye on his face. His body was fat and his chi was comparable to a third heaven destruction realm cultivator. However, the aura force of his bloodline was extremely terrifying. He was the ancestor of Old Monster Dong Lin. He had passed away a long time ago, but he had sealed his abilities in the 49 banners and bestowed them to his descendants. With Old Monster Dong Lin's cultivation base, he could not summon the ancestral spirit which was stronger than his cultivation base to attack the enemy. However, the aura force of the ancestral spirit was the royal bloodline of a black tortoise king. With just the aura force of the royal bloodline, it could scare away ordinary demon cultivators. The shadow of the giant did not make a move. He just stood with his hands behind his back and looked at Ning Fan with disdain. All of a sudden, a cold light flashed across his eyes. A wave of monstrous aura force of the royal bloodline pressed down on the entire heavenly dwelling. Old Monster Dong Lin's eyes were filled with respect. Cultivating the royal bloodline was his life's pursuit. However, he knew that he probably could not achieve it. This Bai Mu isn't weak. However, he might not be able to withstand the suppression of the royal bloodline. He will probably suffer some injuries. Old Monster Dong Lin was thinking. At the next moment, he saw a scene that made him feel unbelievable. Ning Fan, who was being suppressed by the royal bloodline, suddenly raised his head. His left eye flashed with an evil purplish-black light and met the eyes of the black-armored giant. At the moment when their eyes met, the only eye of the black-armored giant suddenly revealed a look of extreme respect. With just a gaze, the aura force of the royal bloodline of the giant, the Black Tortoise King, collapsed and went out of control. The giant's shadow shattered into pieces. The power of the 49 banners was also greatly damaged and fell from the sky. The giant was completely defeated in the battle of aura force. How is this possible? This Bai Mu actually broke the aura force of the royal bloodline of the Black Tortoise King. It was impossible for Old Monster Dong Lin to know that Ning Fan possessed the ancestral grade Fu Li bloodline. Why would he be afraid of the royal bloodline of the Black Tortoise King? If it wasn't because revealing his ancestral grade bloodline would bring him great trouble, Ning Fan could easily suppress Old Monster Dong Lin with the might of his ancestral grade bloodline. It seems like I have to display the innate ability of the Black Tortoise race to have a chance of winning. Cold Ice Domain. Old Monster Dong Lin suddenly made a mysterious hand seal and his face turned pale. His bloodline of the Black Tortoise was not pure. Thus, it was extremely difficult for him to display his innate ability. However, he firmly believed that if he had a 30% chance of winning against Ning Fan, it would definitely be because of this ability. Zzz, the entire heavenly dwelling suddenly became chilly. The ocean, which was tens of thousands of li beneath Old Monster Dong Lin's feet, was completely frozen in an instant. Even the waves were frozen. Countless barriers seemed to have formed in all directions. Within these barriers, Old Monster Dong Lin's chi gradually increased by nearly 20%. On the other hand, Ning Fan's chi was greatly suppressed. It fell from the peak of the second break realm to the ordinary second break realm. Freeze! Old Monster Dong Lin made the last hand seal and suddenly shouted. At this moment, the entire space of the 22nd floor had become his domain. At this moment, all the cold chi in this place had to listen to his command. Countless cold chi gathered towards Ning Fan. His body began to stiffen and his blood was about to freeze. At this moment, his body was suddenly engulfed in black devil flames, burning all the cold ice away. He kept Emperor Xia's sword and a gigantic diagram of black flames appeared beneath his feet. At the moment when the diagram of black flames appeared, the cold chi in the entire heavenly dwelling was almost swept away. The layers of ice barriers began to melt and the frozen ocean also began to melt. Void ignition. Ning Fan raised his finger and pointed at old monster Dong Lin from afar. His finger was covered in flames. At the moment when he pointed, millions of black fiery butterflies rose from the diagram of flames and gathered above Ning Fan's head, forming a gigantic fiery butterfly whose wings covered the entire sky. Ning Fan had already broken through to the void fragmentation realm. The power of the void ignition butterfly flame technique was naturally much stronger than before. The moment the fire butterfly appeared, fear appeared on old monster Dong Lin's face for the first time. This is a great divine ability that is infinitely close to a celestial art. Bai Mu had actually learned such a powerful divine ability. Not good, black tortoise armor, protect me. The fat old monster Dong Lin's body swayed and transformed into a huge black tortoise. The moment it transformed into its demon form, the black tortoise shrunk its entire body into its turtle shell. At this moment, the giant butterfly flapped its wings. First flap, second flap, third flap, fourth flap, fifth flap. The giant butterfly flapped its wings 5 times in a row, but it was still not Ning Fan's current limit. The 6th and 7th flaps. Ning Fan's face began to turn pale, but his eyes were filled with monstrous battle intent. The 7th fan was his current limit. Once he unleashed this technique, no one would be able to withstand it other than an invincible shatterer. The defense of the tortoise shell of the Black Tortoise clan was extremely heaven-defying. Even though old monster Dong Lin had already determined that he was no match for Ning Fan, he did not think that Ning Fan could break his defense. However, after the fire butterfly flapped its wings for the 7th time, the sky was filled with black flames and smoke, causing old monster Dong Lin to lose all of his confidence. The tortoise shell that had heaven-defying defense turned into ashes bit by bit in the butterfly flames at a speed visible to the naked eye. Not long after, the entire tortoise shell was incinerated by the butterfly flames. The moment he lost his tortoise shell, old monster Dong Lin returned to his human form. His face was pale as he stared at the butterfly flames that filled the sky. He knew that he had been completely defeated. Moreover, if Ning Fan does not stop, he, the dignified old monster Dong Lin, would directly die under the butterfly flames. I admit defeat. Please show mercy, fellow Taoist Bai. Old monster Dong Lin gritted his teeth and cupped his fists, no longer defending himself against the butterfly flames. Even his strongest defense could not withstand the butterfly flames. No matter how hard he tried to defend himself, it would be futile. Disperse. Ning Fan withdrew his finger and dispersed the butterfly flames that filled the sky. The giant butterfly above his head did not immediately disperse. It was still staring at old monster Dong Lin like a tiger watching its prey. As long as Ning Fan is willing, he could use this technique to kill Dong Lin. However, he had no grudges with Dong Lin. There was no need for him to kill him just to see a cave dwelling. You, step down. Ning Fan ordered with a cold tone. Yes. Old monster Dong Lin's body was already drenched in cold sweat. How would he dare to stay any longer in this place? As soon as he heard Ning Fan asking him to leave, he immediately cupped his fists excitedly as if he had just been pardoned. Then, he hurriedly ran to the upper floor. This technique is really terrifying. Zhou Nan's eyes were filled with astonishment. Perhaps only some old monsters at the rogue demon realm could display a powerful technique like the void ignition technique. Ning Fan was limited by his cultivation base. He could not display the full power of this technique. However, if his cultivation base was strong enough one day, perhaps no one in the demon world would be able to withstand his void ignition technique other than the 3 rogue demons. If this young man's cultivation base improves further, even I wouldn't dare to withstand this technique of his. Zhou Nan sighed. Great Elder, aren't you tired after following and watching for a long time? Let's go into the cave dwelling and have a rest. Ning Fan dispersed the giant butterfly in the fire diagram, exiting the incarnation state and soul extraction state. Then, he returned to his white-robed body. Even though he had defeated old monster Dong Lin, it was not an easy victory. Currently, his magic power was greatly depleted. The chances of him winning against the 3 shattering old monsters on the 21st floor were slim. He could only have a chance of winning after he recovered his magic power. Even if he could win against the 3 shattering old monsters, it would certainly be a tough battle. According to Ning Fan's estimation, after he recovers his magic power, he should be able to enter the top 20 floors before the competition ends. However, if he wants to defeat the 4 old monsters, his current strength was still far from enough. In the end, I still have to borrow Lei Jinzi's power to seize the cave dwelling from the 4 old monsters. Ning Fan remained silent for a while. Then, he dived into the sea that had already melted and entered the cave dwelling. Under Ning Fan's invitation, Zhou Nan no longer concealed himself. He showed himself and followed Ning Fan into the cave dwelling to rest. When he found out that Ning Fan was already a void fragmentation realm expert, he already regarded Ning Fan as his peer. However, he still did not think that Ning Fan could be a match for him. After watching the battle between Ning Fan and Dong Lin, Zhou Nan was filled with mixed emotions. Ning Fan's abilities were extremely powerful. Even if he wants to defeat Ning Fan, he would certainly have to go through a tough battle. If Ning Fan's cultivation base improves further, even he would most likely lose to Ning Fan. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Zhou Nan entered the cave dwelling to regulate his breathing and sat down to discuss the Tao with Ning Fan. Ning Fan consumed a pill to recover his magic power. Since he could not do anything else at the moment, he could only discuss the Tao. After their conversation, Zhou Nan could not help but be impressed by Ning Fan's profound Tao comprehension. As for Ning Fan, after recovering some of his magic power, he stood up and used the power of the primitive Emperor Jade to comprehend the Tao in this cave dwelling. The Tao of life and death in the first 20 floors were all the Tao comprehensions of immortals. The Tao of life and death in the 22nd floor was left behind by a rogue demon who had almost become an immortal. Even though that person had yet to become an immortal, his Tao comprehension had instantly attracted Ning Fan's attention. It was not that this person could not become an immortal. It was just that, his ambition was not to become an immortal. When ordinary people seek immortality, they seek immortality. However, what he sought was just the process of becoming an immortal. It was the process of comprehending life and death. Those who seek Tao forget life and death. Those who seek Tao are born in the morning and die in the evening. I have been cultivating the Tao all my life and I only seek to comprehend life and death thoroughly. It's a pity that I can't comprehend it. This person's understanding of life and death was already enough to become an immortal. However, he was not satisfied. What he wanted to understand was the origin of life and death, the origin of the great Tao. The dream that he pursued was too grand. It was so grand that he could not achieve it even if he died. Ning Fan closed his eyes and the scenery in front of him changed. He seemed to have turned into that rogue demon old monster, appearing in the memories of his mind. The place of his memories was the place where the rogue demon old monster comprehended the Tao all year round. It was a mortal town. Ning Fan seemed to have turned into the appearance of that rogue demon old monster, walking in the dusk of the setting sun. At this time, it was the time when farmers and merchants returned home. It was also the time when the lights in the restaurants were lit up. Old Tan, why don't you come and have a drink? Hee hee. Today, we have your favorite peach blossom wine. Outside a restaurant called the Red Sleeve Pavilion, a beautiful woman who still retained her charm was trying to attract customers. Sure. Ning Fan stepped into the restaurant. His current identity was that rogue demon old monster. He sat on the favorite seat of that old monster, paid the money and drank the wine. His eyes, however, were looking at the setting sun through the window. That rogue demon old monster's wish was to comprehend life and death thoroughly. The reason why he stayed in the mortal world was to comprehend the great Tao from mortals. Is this the life of this person? Is this the enlightenment of this person? Ning Fan calmly drank the wine. One more Tao mark gradually appeared on his primordial spirit. He put down the wine cup and was about to withdraw his state of mind and leave this illusory realm. Suddenly, his eyes turned cold and he stared at the window in disbelief. At this moment, a butterfly that was half black and half white flew past the window. When the butterfly saw Ning Fan, it suddenly stopped flying. It seemed to be a little puzzled. That butterfly was an ordinary mortal butterfly. However, it gave Ning Fan a soul-stirring feeling. This butterfly. Ning Fan's eyes changed dramatically. Chapter 645. The moment Ning Fan saw the butterfly, the blood in his body throbbed as if it was resonating with the butterfly. It was as if he was the butterfly and the butterfly was him. Ning Fan finally understood who this butterfly was. This butterfly is me in my previous life. It's doubtful because it saw its next life. In the old man's memory, Ning Fan met with his previous life. The butterfly in his previous life saw him in his next life. He seemed to have understood something, but he couldn't fully comprehend it due to his limited cultivation realm. This encounter seemed to be deliberately arranged by samsara, but the nature of samsara was far beyond his understanding. In Mu Weiliang's memory, Ning Fan had also seen his previous life and met the butterfly's eyes, but it wasn't as thrilling as it was now. At that time, his cultivation realm was still weak, far inferior to his current cultivation realm. Now that he met the butterfly's eyes, he seemed to have grasped a trace of samsara. Samsara, samsara, when the butterfly was born, I wasn't born. When I was born, the butterfly was already dead. My previous life and this life couldn't coexist. Because of the separation of life and death, we were separated by two lives. This is samsara. I saw the butterfly in my previous life because I peeked into someone else's memory. It's not strange. But the butterfly also saw me. Why? What is it relying on? Why can it see me, see my next life? Ning Fan felt a sharp pain in his heart and forcefully withdrew himself from the memory. His eyes gradually became clear and his mind became clear. He seemed to have forgotten everything, including Zhou Nan who was beside him. In his mind, he was thinking about this encounter repeatedly. He seemed to have understood something, but he couldn't see through it. The first step of cultivation was to understand life and death. The second step was to understand the Tao truth. The third step was to understand time and space. The fourth step was to understand samsara. Transcending life and death, reversing the true and the void, rewriting time and space. Only by cultivating step by step could one finally understand samsara. Ning Fan didn't know all these at first because he was currently in a strange state. This state was the state of the unity of heaven and man. Initially, he didn't know what the purpose of cultivation was, but at this moment, he had an epiphany. It turned out that the purpose of cultivating step by step was to understand samsara. It turned out that the life and death he comprehended in the immortal ascension tower was just the first step of samsara. At this moment, Ning Fan's eyes were as vast as the great Tao. At this moment, Ning Fan's eyes were like the reincarnation cycle that could see through all life and death. Life and death were contained in samsara. He glanced at Zhou Nan, and to his surprise, he discovered that he could read all of Zhou Nan's memories. He saw how Zhou Nan was born. At the same time, he saw how Zhou Nan would die in the future. Without using any unnecessary means, he saw the scene of Zhou Nan's death many years later. 30,000 years later, you will attain the sixth heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. After that, your lifespan will come to an end. Ning Fan said to Zhou Nanyan with an indifferent tone. Zhou Nan's face was filled with shock. He was more shocked than ever. Even when he saw that Ning Fan possessed Void Fragmentation Realm Cultivation Base, cultivated the Tao Light of Life and Death and defeated Sui San, he was not as astonished as he was now. However, at this moment, when he met Ning Fan's eyes, he actually had a feeling of absurdity. He felt that Ning Fan's eyes could see through life and death. Ning Fan could see his life and death. If Ning Fan said that he still had 30,000 years before he would die, he believed him. Because he saw his own future in Ning Fan's eyes. What? What a terrifying gaze. There is a supreme great Tao in his eyes. I will die. I will die 30,000 years later. Just as Zhou Nan was thinking about that, he felt a sharp pain in his sea of consciousness and fainted. His short memory of knowing the date of his death was forcefully wiped away by the power of reincarnation. If he was awake, he would not remember Ning Fan's shocking gaze and his future. Samsara. This is the power of samsara. Although there is only a trace of samsara power in my eyes, Zhou Nan could not resist it at all. Comprehending life and death is only the first step of comprehending samsara. Life and death, true and void, space-time and then samsara. The current me can see through life and death. At this moment, Ning Fan did not spread out his spirit sense but his gaze could see through the entire Immortal Ascension Tower. His gaze swept from the 500th floor all the way to the first floor. All the cultivators inside and outside the abode felt as if they were looking straight into Ning Fan's eyes the moment they sensed his gaze. Looking into Ning Fan's eyes was like looking into the entire heaven and earth and the great Tao of the heavens. Ning Fan could see through their life and death with just a single glance. Ken Feng of the Fire Silkworm race died 1,200 years later. The cause of his death was an unsuccessful attempt to steal the treasure. Rogue cultivator Zhu Jun died 400 years later. The cause of death was the Void Pierce stage heavenly tribulation. Elder Feng and Elder Lei died 700 years later. The cause of death was the battle at the Azure Dragon Mountain ruins. Qi Gui of the Scarlet Palace will die 30,000 years later. You have a high chance of attaining the Void Fragmentation Realm in this lifetime. However, you will die in the great calamity of the Scarlet Palace when you are at the Void Fragmentation Realm. Yang Sha of the Flying Sand Clan died 600 years later. The cause of death was the massacre of the Flying Sand Clan, Wei Qing of the Green Wings Clan. He died 3,200 years later. The cause of his death was cold poison biting his body. The Tian Shao clan's Dian Shao died 10 years later. The cause of death was an attempt to pluck. Sun Lan of the Valley Royal Family died 57 years later. The cause of death was dangerous in a dangerous place. Ning Fan's eyes scanned through the layers of the abode. Any cultivator who was swept by his eyes would be instantly killed. They would see the state of their own death, and then they would faint on the ground, their memories wiped. Ning Fan's eyes scanned through the 100 floors below. Jin Guangzi and the other old monsters of Gue Yuan all fainted and fell to the ground. When they saw the state of their own death, their faces were filled with extreme fear. They knew that what they saw was not an illusion but the true heaven's will. Before they could understand why they would see the day of their deaths, Ning Fan's gaze suddenly swept past them. All of them fainted on the ground and their memories were wiped. The 35th floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower. Yun Yomu's expression changed greatly. From the heaven's will, he saw that he would die 1,000 years later. The cause of death was the Tao poison biting his body. Before he could react, he had already fainted on the ground. His memories were wiped and his face was filled with intense shock. The 29th floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower. The last Lord of Heaven had just taken back his abode. Before he could even sit down properly, his eyes were filled with fear. He was scanned by an extremely terrifying gaze. Then, he saw that in another 2,400 years, his entire clan would be destroyed by the enemy. Before he could react, the last Lord of Heaven also fainted on the ground and his memories were wiped. The 28th floor, the 27th floor, the 26th floor, each of the Void Fragmentation Realm old monsters saw their own deaths and fainted on the ground. Their memories were wiped. Be it the third heavenly layer void fragmentation realm cultivators, the fourth heavenly layer void fragmentation realm or the fifth heavenly layer void fragmentation realm, none of them could resist Ning Fan's gaze. It was because Ning Fan's eyes contained the power of samsara. On the 9th floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower, Sword Demon Gong Yangzi was shocked when he saw that he would die in the Immortal Burning Valley 1 year later. Then, he fainted on the ground and his memories were wiped. On the 8th floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower, Old Monster Xuanhua also saw that he would die in the Immortal Burning Valley 1 year later. Then, he fainted on the ground and lost his memories. On the 6th floor of the Immortal Ascension Tower, while he Shishio was sitting cross-legged, he was suddenly scanned by an extremely terrifying gaze. In that gaze, he saw the heaven's will and the state of his own death. His eyes were filled with shock. He was shocked by his own fate and the owner of that gaze. He was actually able to see through the heaven's will. He Shishio could not imagine what cultivation realm the expert was at to have such a terrifying gaze that could see through the heaven's will. Even the true immortal realm old ancestor of the Jade Dao sect did not have such a terrifying gaze. Heaven's will. Heaven's will. I don't want to die so miserably. But this is the heaven's will. Come to think of it, why does that mysterious expert's voice sound so familiar? I remember now. This voice, it's Bai Mu. He Shishio's heart was in turmoil. He could not believe that the person who could see through life and death with a gaze was Ning Fan. In the next moment, he Shishio felt a sharp pain in his sea of consciousness and fainted on the ground. His memories were wiped and all the shock was forgotten. The 5th floor, the 4th floor, the 3rd floor, the 2nd floor, one after another, 5th heavenly layer void fragmentation realm old monsters could not resist the samsara power in Ning Fan's eyes. They fainted one after another and their memories were wiped. In the entire Immortal Ascension Tower, the only person who did not faint from Ning Fan's gaze was 7-break old monster Tan Longzi. Although he did not faint from Ning Fan's gaze, the pain he suffered was countless times more than the others. This was because ordinary people would pass out cleanly, but he tried to resist the samsara power. As a result, the injuries in his sea of consciousness became more and more serious. What pained him the most was that he saw the state of his own death. Tan Longzi was disheartened, but he began to feel shocked again. He realized that a peerless expert had entered the Immortal Ascension Tower and had the ability to see through the heaven's will. Just a gaze from him was enough to make him lose all his strength. Who is this person? Could he be a life immortal or a true immortal from the upper world? While he was panicking, his expression suddenly changed. He saw a young man in white with eyes like the Tao walking towards him step by step on the first level of the cave. Tan Longzi died 20,000 years later. The cause of his death was because he failed to become an immortal. Ning Fan's gaze swept across Tan Longzi. Tan Longzi's sea of consciousness was in extreme pain and he almost fainted. He looked at Ning Fan in disbelief. It was hard to believe that an expert with peerless eyes was not a true immortal or a life immortal but a first heavenly layer void fragmentation realm junior. The one who let me see the heavens will is actually a first heavenly layer void fragmentation realm cultivator. Tan Longzi's gaze changed several times in just a few breaths. He could see that Ning Fan's cultivation base was far weaker than his. However, he also knew that if Ning Fan wanted to kill him at this moment, he would only need a gaze. In that gaze, there was a kind of terrifying power that he could not understand. That power caused him to be terrified, it caused his soul to tremble, and it caused him to be more and more unable to muster any will to resist. That power could see through life and death and see the heaven's will. That power was like the heaven's will. Little friend, you let me see the heaven's will. Your abilities are really incredible. Tan Longzi smiled bitterly. The reason why he came to the dragon fishing convention was to fish for the dragon pearl to increase his cultivation base and fight for the immortal ascension. However, after knowing that he would fail to become an immortal and die 20,000 years later, the passion in his heart gradually cooled down. He saw the heaven's will. The heaven's will couldn't be faked, However, as soon as he closed his eyes, the scene of his death would appear in his mind and he began to feel unwilling. The heavens will had determined that he would die 20,000 years later. He was unwilling to accept it. Tan Longzi also understood that the heavens will could not be disobeyed and could not be defied. However, which expert in the world would be willing to bow their heads and wait for death? Even if they knew that the heavens will could not be disobeyed, they still wanted to try and see if they could avoid the predestined fate. I'm not willing to fail to become an immortal. I'm not willing to die with hatred. However, I know that with my aptitude, becoming an immortal is already a matter of life and death. It's perfectly normal for me to die. It's hard to defy the heavens' will. Tan Longzi knew that he couldn't defy the heavens' will with his own strength. Suddenly, his eyes fell on Ning Fan. An idea flashed in his mind and he asked shamelessly. Little friend, since you can see through my life and death fate, I wonder if you have any way to help me change my fate? No. The heavens will naturally arrange a chance of survival. I don't know if it can change your fate, but I don't have the ability to help you. Ning Fan said indifferently. If I serve you as my master and follow you, I wonder if you can teach me the ability to see through the heavens' will so that I can change my own fate? Tan Longzi asked nervously. Serve me as your master and follow me? Ning Fan's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. At the moment when Tan Longzi said those words, he realized that Tan Longzi's fate had slightly shifted. Tan Longzi's death fate suddenly had a chance of survival. Ning Fan shook his head. He could not teach Tan Longzi the power of samsara. It was a coincidence that he entered the state of the union of heaven and man. However, it also seemed to be arranged by someone. He could see through the heavens will by borrowing the power of samsara. He could see through life and death with his eyes of samsara. Ning Fan himself did not know this ability. How could he teach it to others? Once the state of the union of heaven and man is removed, the samsara in his eyes would disappear. I have only used this ability once by chance. I haven't really mastered it yet, so I can't teach it to you. However, if you follow me, your fate will be slightly affected and change. If you serve me as your master, you won't fail to become an immortal 20,000 years later. However, due to your innate talent, your cultivation base will stop at the life immortal realm for the rest of your life. What? If I serve you as my master, I will actually have the chance to become an immortal in this life. Tan Longzi's eyes lit up. At this moment, Ning Fan seemed to have become a life-saving straw in his fate. He wanted to try and change his own fate. The people outside the Immortal Ascension Tower had no idea what was happening inside the tower. The only thing they could see was Bai Mu's ranking rising continuously. In the end, he rose from the 23rd place to the 1st place. Old ancestor Bai Mu actually managed to snatch the abode from Senior Tan Longzi. This is absolutely impossible. Senior Tan Longzi is a 7th heavenly layer void fragmentation realm expert. It's impossible for him to lose to old ancestor Bai Mu. Everyone found it unbelievable. At this moment, no one thought that Ning Fan could defeat Tan Longzi with his 1st heavenly layer void fragmentation realm cultivation base. Something special must have happened. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to snatch the abode with his 1st heavenly layer void fragmentation realm cultivation base. The Yuan Emperor's eyes darkened. He really wanted to know what exactly happened inside the Immortal Ascension Tower. Unfortunately, for the sake of fairness, the battles inside the Immortal Ascension Tower were not visible to outsiders. No one knew what happened inside the tower. The rankings on the Demon Steel did not show any abnormalities. Other than Ning Fan's rising ranking, the others were still normal. The Yuan Emperor took out Great Elder Zhou Nan's life token and transmitted his voice to it. The reply he got was Zhou Nan's thunderous snoring. He fell asleep. The Yuan Emperor was stunned. Without Zhou Nan's message, he could only enter the tower himself to find out what happened inside. There was still 1 hour left before the end of the grand competition. The Yuan Emperor pondered for a while and decided that there was no need for him to enter the tower again. When the grand competition ends and everyone comes out, everything would be clear to him. The ape emperor closed his eyes and waited quietly for the grand competition to end. His heart was filled with killing intent towards Ning Fan. An hour passed in the blink of an eye. The ape emperor suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, the gate of the Immortal Ascension Tower was opened. Countless cultivators gathered themselves and looked at the gate of the Immortal Ascension Tower. Gradually, cultivators flew out of the tower one after another. Each of them looked sleepy. They had just woken up from their unconscious state. When they woke up, they did not remember seeing the way they died. As soon as these old monsters came out, countless disciples of the sect went to greet them and asked them questions. These old monsters still remembered that they were taught a lesson by Ning Fan. When they saw the first position on the demon stele, their faces were filled with shock and their tiredness disappeared. The one who obtained the first floor of the abode is actually Bai Mu. Be it those who knew about Ning Fan's void fragmentation realm cultivation base or those who did not, all of them were shocked. After all, no one expected that Ning Fan could obtain the abode from Tan Longzi. As for Tan Longzi, he only obtained the abode on the 20th floor. He Shishio and the others walked out of the Immortal Ascension Tower and looked at the demon stele. Other than Yunyomu, the other three were shocked when they saw what was on the stele. A mere Bai Mu actually obtained the first floor of the abode. How is this possible? Not long after, Zhou Nan also came out. Uncle Zhou. Tan Zixin suddenly shouted because she saw Zhou Nan, an old man who was yawning and flying out of the Immortal Ascension Tower. Zhou Nan was stunned. Then, he flew towards Tan Zixin with a smile. He took out the jade slip that he used to test Ning Fan and passed it to her. Tan Zixin took the jade slip. After taking a glance at it, her pretty face was immediately filled with joy. He can save Grandpa. He can. What? Bai Mu can cure the old. He can cure that person's injuries. Zhou Nan was so excited that he nearly blurted out. Only then did he realize that Tan Zixin did not look for Ning Fan because of a romantic relationship. Instead, she wanted to save the old Yuan Emperor. All of a sudden, all the cultivators at the scene held their breaths. They saw a white-robed young man flying out of the Immortal Ascension Tower together with Tan Longzi. That young man was none other than Ning Fan, who had caused a huge commotion in this competition. He is old ancestor Bai Mu, who obtained the first place in this competition. On the high platform, countless low-grade cultivators looked at Ning Fan with respect. There were also countless young ladies who could not help but fall in love with Ning Fan when they saw his youthful appearance. Humph! Are you Bai Mu? A discordant voice suddenly resounded across the entire North Heaven primordial city like a sudden clap of thunder. Ning Fan's eyes turned cold the moment he heard the voice. On the high platform in the north, the figure of the ape sovereign was gradually turning into a shadow and disappearing. Suddenly, a burly man in black robes with thick hair appeared in the empty space in front of Ning Fan. Without saying a word, he directly grabbed Ning Fan's neck with his 5 fingers. This person was none other than the ape sovereign. As soon as Ning Fan appeared, he already wanted to take him down. Everyone was shocked by the sudden change on the stage. He Shishio's eyes flashed with surprise. Then, he sneered. Let's not talk about how this Bai Mu obtained the first floor of the cave dwelling. He seems to have offended the dignified ape sovereign Dao Kong. Now, there's going to be a good show to watch. The Yuan sovereign was also shocked. Of course, he did not expect the ape sovereign Dao Kong to attack Ning Fan without considering his identity. The Yuan sovereign's physical body was at the 7th heavenly layer of Nirvana realm, while Ning Fan was only at the 1st heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. The huge difference in their cultivation levels made countless people think that Ning Fan would be taken down by the ape sovereign Dao Kong. Tan Zixin's face turned pale with fright. She immediately sent a telepathic message to her father from afar, hoping that her father could save Ning Fan. As soon as he heard that Ning Fan could actually heal the injuries of the previous Yuan sovereign, his expression changed drastically. Without hesitation, he wanted to save Ning Fan. Unfortunately, his cultivation base was much weaker than Dao Kong's. Moreover, it was already too late for him to save Ning Fan. Even if he were to intervene, he probably would not be able to save Ning Fan. You can't kill people in Heaven Primordial City. Come with me. Dao Kong was intimidated by the previous Yuan sovereign's reputation. Thus, he did not dare to kill Ning Fan in this place. What he was thinking was to temporarily capture Ning Fan and bring him out of the territory of the Yuan Palace before killing him. Even though he did not use his full strength, it was still enough to capture Ning Fan easily. Unexpectedly, before his claw could reach Ning Fan's neck, Tan Longzi, who was standing beside Ning Fan, had already taken a step forward and stood in front of Ning Fan. Tan Longzi's eyes were extremely cold. He looked at the ape sovereign Dao Kong as if he was looking at a great enemy. To him, whoever attacks Ning Fan is a great enemy. He suddenly raised his sleeve and swept it at Dao Kong. Even though it was a soft sleeve, it contained terrifying demonic power and great abilities. You can't touch this by Mu. Void Technique, Universe Concealing Sleeve. Tan Longzi was known as the barefooted Taoist due to his unique appearance. The technique that made him famous was none other than the Universe Concealing Sleeve technique. Chapter 646. Tan Longzi's appearance was rather peculiar. He was thin and strangely tall, with yellow eyebrows and no beard. His appearance was haggard, and he walked barefoot. He had the bloodline of the yellow dragon, but his bloodline rank was not high. He had barely reached the rank of true blood. He had suddenly attacked and used the heaven and earth in a sleeve to stop Dao Kong, and this greatly surprised Dao Kong. The Heaven and Earth sleeve was a divine ability that was both offensive and defensive. When attacking, it could injure people with the sleeve wind, and when defending, it could take away the enemy's divine ability. A yellow light shone in Tan Longzi's sleeve, and the power in Dao Kong's claw suddenly froze. The glare from his finger was strangely taken away. A dark yellow gust of wind charged at Dao Kong's chest. With one strike, it was as if 10,000 mountains had crashed down on him. Even with the strength of Dao Kong's physical body, when he was caught off guard, several of his ribs were broken by the wind. He retreated tens of thousands of feet in the sky before stabilizing himself. Every step he took back would shatter a piece of the void. The dark yellow gale was Tan Longzi's natal astral wind that he had bitterly cultivated for many years. Its power was naturally not to be underestimated. The ape emperor Dao Kong was a 7th Shatterer cultivator, and his fleshly body had also reached the 7th Nirvana realm. Logically speaking, he should have been able to withstand the astral winds. However, Tan Longzi's attack had been too sudden, and Dao Kong had been caught off guard, which was why he had been injured by Tan Longzi's attack. Tan Longzi, you dare to go against me for a mere Baimu? Dao Kong flew into a rage. Black light shone around him, and his broken bones reconnected on their own. He was healed. This wasn't the star healing technique, but a body regeneration technique that cultivators above the 5th heavenly layer of Nirvana realm possessed. Although he suffered a small loss at the hands of Tan Longzi, his strength was above Tan Longzi's, so he naturally did not fear Tan Longzi in the slightest. Humph! What do you mean by a mere white wood? Baimu is this old man's master. How can I allow you to make a move to harm him? Tan Longzi replied with a cold smile. As soon as this was said, all of the tens of thousands of cultivators present were shocked. What? Ancestor Whitewood was actually Senior Tan Longzi's master. This. Many people were shocked by this news. In the demon world, even though Tan Longzi was not a demon sovereign, he was still a famous figure in the world. No one would dare to underestimate him with his cultivation base at the 7th heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm. Even some Shatterer 1 and Shatterer 2 cultivators would have to address Tan Longzi as senior. It was simply unbelievable that a person with such a high status like Tan Longzi would actually serve Ning Fan as his master. And from the looks of it, Tan Longzi's eyes didn't show any signs of being forced. He was completely willing to be a servant. Who exactly is Ning Fan? He can actually make Tan Longzi willingly become his servant. The entire North Tianyuan city was dead silent in a split second. Even the primitive sovereign who was about to rescue Ning Fan withdrew his hand and watched the scene in silence. Tan Longzi, I'm not in the mood to joke with you, the ape emperor Dao Kong's gaze darkened. He did not believe that Tan Longzi, who was at the 7th Shatterer realm, would become the servant of Bai Mu, who was at the 1st Shatterer realm. This was simply too absurd. He Shirshio's eyes widened in shock. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Even though he was a Daoist of the Jade Dao sect in the upper realm, he was only assigned a few servants by the sect. He was merely the 3rd Daoist of the Jade Dao sect. Only the great Daoist was qualified to have a fragmented 7 servant. What right does this Bai Mu have to be able to take the 7 old freaks as servants? I don't believe it. The ape emperor and he Shirshio were not the only ones who did not believe it. Among the tens of thousands of cultivators present, none of them would believe such a ridiculous thing. Tan Longzi did not want to explain anything. He suddenly bent his knees and half-knelt on the ground, cupping his fists at Ning Fan. This subordinate's name is Tan Longzi. My demon title is Barefoot Daoist. However, from today onwards, this subordinate is Master's servant. I beg Master to give me a new name. From today onwards, this subordinate will definitely follow Master through life and death. This scene made everyone's eyes widen in bewilderment. Tan Longzi did not look like he was joking at all. A dignified 7th Shatterer realm old freak actually knelt before someone and willingly became his servant. He actually gave up his previous reputation and begged Ning Fan to give him a new name. He was not joking. He really was not joking. Tan Longzi was really going to serve Ning Fan as his master. You have the Yellow Dragon's demon bloodline. I will give you a new name. From today onwards, you will be called Li Long. Your descendants will be the Li Dragon clan. Li Long, the servant of the dragon of Fu Li. No one knew how excited Tan Longzi was at this moment. From today onwards, his name would be Li Long and he would be Ning Fan's servant. Others might not know how powerful Ning Fan was, but he did. He was the only one who still remembered Ning Fan's terrifying eyes. He was also the only one who knew that Ning Fan had an ancestral demon bloodline in the Immortal Ascension Tower. When Ning Fan planted the demon seal on him, he deliberately revealed the pressure of his bloodline in order to convince this person wholeheartedly. In front of the pressure of Ning Fan's 4 drops of ancestral blood, Tan Longzi was completely stunned. The pressure of Ning Fan's bloodline was not inferior to that of the true Dragon Clan's leader in the Demon Spirit Land. Moreover, the type of Ning Fan's demon bloodline was something that Tan Longzi had never seen before. It was incomparably powerful, as if it was the ruler of all demons. Even though the luck of this blood was filthy and its demon sense was evil, it contained the pride of a supreme being. It was the pride that once oversaw the heavenly Tao and ruled over all living beings. This kind of bloodline seemed to be countless times more noble than the blood of a true dragon. Ning Fan even took out a trace of Fu Li's ancestral blood and gave it to Tan Longzi to help him improve his bloodline. Even though it was only a trace of the ancestral blood, it greatly increased the density of Tan Longzi's original Yellow Dragon bloodline. However, after obtaining the Fu Li's blood, that bloodline no longer seemed to be suitable to be called the Yellow Dragon bloodline. Even though Ning Fan's cultivation base was not high, his abilities were shocking. His identity was also a dignified demon ancestor. Moreover, he even gave Tan Longzi his bloodline. Tan Longzi naturally would not feel wronged at all to be a servant of such a person. On the contrary, he was very proud of it. He firmly believed that as long as he followed Ning Fan in this life, he would certainly be able to change his destiny. Thank you, Master, for bestowing me with a name. From today onwards, this subordinate will be called Li Long. In the future, I will definitely establish the Li Dragon clan and help Master conquer the world. Get up. Yes. Tan Longzi. No. Li Long stood up respectfully and stood beside Ning Fan, glaring at the Ape Emperor Dao Kong. Even though he was slightly weaker than Dao Kong, with him around, Dao Kong could forget about harming Ning Fan at all. The Ape Emperor Dao Kong's expression was extremely ugly. At the same time, he looked at Ning Fan with great fear while guessing inwardly. Could it be that this young man is already a member of the True Spirit clan in the upper world? In Dao Kong's opinion, only when Ning Fan has the identity of a cultivator from the upper world would he be qualified to take Li Long as his servant. Similar guesses rose in many people's minds. Dao Kong was hesitant. Of course, he was not afraid of Li Long, but he began to worry that Ning Fan might have a powerful background. If Ning Fan really had a powerful background, it seemed a little unwise to offend him just for a mere disciple. Ape Emperor. Little friend Bai Mu is an important guest of my Yuan Hall. If he is in trouble, I will not sit by and do nothing. If he is injured, the old primitive sovereign will not let this matter rest either. The primitive sovereign stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were dignified and firm. Since Ning Fan was so important to the old primitive sovereign, he would do his best to ensure that Ning Fan remained unscathed even if he had to mobilize all of the Yuan Hall's forces. The primitive sovereign was also guessing that Ning Fan might have already gotten in touch with a great clan in the upper world. Regardless of whether that was the truth or not, he had decided to protect Ning Fan just to treat the old primitive sovereign's injuries. He would not hesitate to start a war with the Ape Palace. Even the Yuan Hall wants to protect this young man, huh? As soon as he heard the old primitive sovereign's name, Dao Kong's eyes became even more gloomy. If he were to become enemies with the Yuan Hall in order to deal with Ning Fan, it would not be worth it. Even though Dao Kong was arrogant and overbearing, he was not a fool. He would not openly become enemies with the Yuan Hall and offend a force that was led by a rogue demon. He suspected that Ning Fan had a venerable identity. Thus, he would not easily take action again. Dao Kong's eyes flashed. Even though his expression was unpleasant, he had already made up his mind. Let's go. Dao Kong's eyes were cold. He turned around and flew back to the high platform in the north. With a grim expression, he led several hundred experts away on a demon cloud. As soon as he left, countless people felt relieved. Even the Fox Sovereign and the Green Sovereign's expressions became slightly more relaxed. The Ape Emperor Dao Kong's notoriety was too great. If this place was not the Yuan Hall but a slightly weaker demon palace, and if Ning Fan did not have Li Long as his servant, Dao Kong would not have lowered his head to him and left willingly. Damn it! That Bai Mu actually has the protection of the Yuan Hall and even Tan Longzi as his servant. If that's the case, how can I lay my hands on such a perfect human cauldron? The Snake Sovereign's old face was tense. She was in a very bad mood. Even the Ape Emperor Dao Kong had to lower his head in front of the Yuan Hall. She did not even dare to offend the Yuan Hall's noble guest. Especially when Ning Fan had Tan Longzi, an old monster at the 7th fragmentation realm, following him. She did not dare to provoke him easily. I think it's better to consider this matter at length. She muttered to herself unwillingly. The competition of the Immortal Ascension Pagoda ended with such a shocking result. The Ape Emperor came with a strong aura force but returned with a gloomy face. Ning Fan's name was unknown when he entered the pagoda, but when he left, his name shook the world. It had only been half a day since the competition of the Immortal Ascension Pagoda ended, but old ancestor Bai Mu's name had already been spread to all the demon seas in the demon world using various secret techniques. Some people even revealed that Ning Fan had cultivated the life and death Dao light. As soon as this news spread, the expressions of the two rogue demons of the Red Hall and the Fox Palace changed. Someone revealed that all the cultivators in the Immortal Ascension Pagoda had mysteriously fainted, and it might be related to Ning Fan. Someone reported to the Yuan Hall that Ning Fan had killed 4 Void Pierce stage experts in the Immortal Ascension Pagoda. These reports made the old Yuan emperor laugh out loud and ordered them to be ignored. This Bai Mu is indeed an outstanding junior. Moreover, according to that little girl, Xian, he can even help me heal my injuries. Hee. It seems like I have the foresight to borrow Bai Mu's primordial emperor jade. With this kind of good karma, he should be able to help me heal my injuries. Sigh. What a troublesome injury. In the palace of the Demon River, a group of female cultivators of the Light Feather clan gaped in astonishment when they heard countless news about Ning Fan. Their old ancestor Bai Mu was actually a dignified void fragmentation realm old monster. Moreover, he even took the world-famous barefoot Daoist as his servant. This is just too unimaginable. Old ancestor's reputation is so well known. Even if we become his concubines, it won't be a waste for us sisters. A young lady with white feathers said with a smile. TCH. What kind of person is old ancestor? With his identity, he can have any woman with any cultivation base he wants. Why would he take a fancy to us? A young lady said self-deprecatingly. Hua Yu sat in her room, pursing her lips. Her face was flushed red. Yesterday, she wanted to offer herself to Ning Fan to protect the other women but was knocked out by him. When she woke up, she found herself lying on Ning Fan's bed with a thin blanket covering her body. Her primordial red hair was not torn and her clothes were not messed up. There were no signs of her being humiliated. She still remembered Ning Fan's promise before she fainted. He told her that he would not touch any of the women of the Light Feather clan. He's not a lecher. He's not the notorious filthy person that others say he is. He's a dignified void fragmentation realm expert who can shake the entire demon world. Hua Yu's eyes were filled with admiration. In the main hall, the little demoness looked at Ning Fan as if she was looking at a monster. Then, she looked at Li Long who was behind him. She had made countless guesses about the outcome of the competition but she did not expect that Ning Fan would use such a method to shake the entire demon world within a day. Li Long greets mistress. Li Long cupped his fists and bowed to the little demoness. He had already acknowledged Ning Fan as his master. Naturally, he would not regret it. Even though the little demoness cultivation base was only at the harmonious spirit realm, her identity was Ning Fan's Tao companion. Li Long naturally did not dare to disrespect her. Hee. What did you call me? Call me again. The little demoness giggled, seemingly very satisfied with how Li Long addressed her. Li Long greets mistress. Call me that again. Li Long greets mistress. Call me that again. Li Long greets mistress. The little demoness was very satisfied with the two words mistress. Then, she said to Ning Fan ambiguously. Husband, this servant of yours is really fun. Lend him to me to play with for a few days. No. Ning Fan rubbed his forehead. Even though Li Long was his servant in name, he was still an old monster of the demon world who once shook the world. Li Long had his dignity. Even though he was a servant, he could not let the little demoness mess with him. Li Long, I'll give you a mission. There are still 3 days before the fishing dragon assembly. Within these 3 days, you will go to the nearby demon sea and purchase all the pills and heavenly materials that can repair the primordial spirit. You don't have to worry about not having enough immortal jade. Ning Fan took out a storage pouch and gave it to Li Long. There were about 1 trillion immortal jade in it. Li Long's eyes scanned the storage pouch and roughly counted the amount of immortal jade. His eyes were filled with surprise but he did not ask why a demon cultivator like Ning Fan would need items to repair the primordial spirit. This subordinate will definitely complete the mission. Li Long cupped his fists and disappeared in a flash. After handing in Li Long's mission, Ning Fan returned to his room and prepared to refine the pure essence pills. Logically speaking, he should be rewarded with 1 pure essence pill for obtaining the first level of the cave. However, the primitive sovereign sent someone to give him 10 pure essence pills, which was exactly 1 bottle. The extra pills were naturally meant to befriend Ning Fan. Ning Fan naturally accepted them without any hesitation. There were still 3 days before the official start of the Fishing Dragon Assembly. During these 3 days, he decided to refine the pure essence pills to improve the cultivation of his spirit sense. After that, he would go to the 9 pavilions to retrieve the fishing rod and find an opportunity to return the primitive sovereign jade to the primitive sovereign. I wonder if I can break through to the second heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm after taking 10 pure essence pills. In the northern Demon Sea, there was an inconspicuous demon island in an extremely desolate sea area. There was a cave dwelling under a short peak on the island. Countless white bones were placed at the entrance of the cave. All of them were the remains of women. Inside the cave, there was a middle-aged man with evil chi who was as thin as a skeleton. His eyes flashed with green evil light which was as dazzling as the sun. He picked up an information jade slip from the half-eaten corpse of a woman beside him. Looking at the person in the information, the middle-aged man sneered. He is not Bai Mu. All of a sudden, the aura force of the second heavenly layer of the void fragmentation realm spread out from the middle-aged man's body. If the star stones of my Lightwing clan are devoured separately, they can only help those who have comprehended the starlight healing technique to improve their star power. However, if 10 star stones are put together and arranged according to a certain rule, they can obtain the star cultivation technique that has been passed down for generations by the ancestors of the Lightwing clan. This person helped me kill the leader of the Xian He clan. I am very grateful to him. Unfortunately, the star stones of the Lightwing clan don't belong to him. He can forget about taking them away. The star stones are mine. All these years, I have been in seclusion in this place. Every day, I pluck and devour women. I am no longer who I used to be. I will no longer be hunted down by a mere half-step void refinement realm expert. This time, I am going to ask the superior demons to help me take back the star stones. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.